All right, welcome to this week's episode of KUDEN, KUDEN Radio. Dachian Miller here from Warrior Concepts. Of course, most of you who are following on a regular basis already know that. For those of you who don't, here we are. Anyway, so we are continuing on with our study into the mind with this episode, and also taking a look at this general realm of um, the missing side of training for a lot of folks, not just in martial arts in general, but also within the ninja realm. Okay, it's easy to talk about certain things. Not as easy to do them. And again, since most people tend to gravitate toward physical techniques, physical training, and then assume that the mind and the heart and whatnot will just follow. And the only thing we're really talking about with spirit is, just diving in and have that go get them or never give up or never quit mentality. And it's not that those things aren't important, but there are some other things, right? So this time around, we're going to be taking a look at a huge missing element, but we're also going to be exploring uh, some of the other elements, right, within the ninja's Seishin Teki Kyoyo. Spiritual refinement, personal development, none of these things really kind of works well. But let me start off by quoting another or giving another quote from Takamatsu Sensei. He said, the essence of true ninjutsu is knowing that which cannot be known, right? And exploring into that realm, right? Knowing what others just ignore. Okay. Again, paraphrasing, but we'll jump into this and a whole lot more as soon as we officially get started. So I'll see you when we get back.
So, the big question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio.
Okay, welcome back. Welcome. Episode, what are we on? 252? Is that right, James? 252? 252. That's like what do they call those things where you read it both way, forward and backwards? Anyway, so who do we have on? Who's joining us early on? I see we've got about a handful of people at the moment.
Looks like Trinity and Jared have checked in so far.
Awesome. All right, so so again, we're gonna stick with this mind thing. One of the big ones that I'm going to be discussing is this idea of zanshin, which we've talked about over the last, I think, 2 episodes, as well as fudoshin and what was the other big thing? Let's see, fudoshin, and I don't know if we mentioned mushin or not. That's something I bring up in the book. For those of you who have already read it, you know that I've got certain, I guess they're comparison charts, because again, it can become easy to get lost in all of these mind and heart kind of things that are listed as core elements: tenshin, fudoshin, heijoshin, zanshin, mushin, all kinds of things, right? So where I thought it might be necessary, because confusion could set in, I have some of those charts set up. But again, it's a place for folks to get started. So I'm using these to dive in a little bit deeper, right? And so we're going to take a look at a huge missing skill, because we want to make sure that we're not falling into the same trap that everyone else is when we're thinking about self-defense or martial arts training. And when I say that they slip into these things, of course, we don't know it, right? We don't know we're doing it. As a matter of fact, this past week, I posted something, I shared something that was about this ancient rune civilization, whatever. It was uncovered by a ginormous storm back in the day. And there was this graphic that kind of came along with it. But the point that I was trying to make is that, uh, we as human beings, or ego, right, can tend to think that we know everything about something. And the higher we go and the more we've studied it, the more that can kind of set in. But very often, right, we've got no other experience or no other knowledge than, we've seen a fight, or we have, seen news stories or whatever. But, we really can't, a lot of folks really can't differentiate between a quote unquote fight and a fight for your life, right? Like a survival situation that looks like what, right? Well, it certainly doesn't look like. This came up just tonight in tonight's class. One of my newer guys has been in the martial arts since he was like 12 years old. James, you were there for that conversation when Alan brought up a discussion with his son, and how his son could not get his head wrapped around how this approach is very different from what he sees in all these other fights, or what he, and it sounds like, I don't get it. What do you mean different? How's it even different? Because for a lot of folks, the only thing that's stuck in their head is this one-on-one, mano-a-mano kind of thing, just like they've seen everywhere from high school fights to bar fights to MMA kind of things or whatever. And so that's the filter that everything else is being run through. Anyway, so I posted this thing about this ancient city that was uncovered, housed about 100 people, give or take, and someone else who knows more about the obviously the site that was sharing the information and the actual location, posted something. And I have to admit, the comment they made rubbed me the wrong way from the get-go, but not because they corrected me or anything like that. It was my perception of the tone that was conveyed, because the first words were, this isn't da 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 da, right? And so, I think the gist of it was, this is a I don't know, a fake site or a fake archaeological site or whatever, and this thing doesn't actually look like the picture shows. And my response was, no, because if I knew that, I would have chosen a better example to go along with the lesson I was trying to convey, or the point I was trying to make. And now, luckily, we're friends well enough to know that we didn't take it the wrong way, and I got over the little moment of I don't know, whatever the emotion was that popped up based on the way it was let off, and they didn't mean anything by it other than to correct an error, I think, or to help me out with correcting an error. But that I'm borrowing that to illustrate a point that nobody sets out to learn the wrong thing. Nobody sets out to do things the wrong way. But we have to understand that we can only operate based on what we know, or what we think we know, because that's what we're trying to add on to, or that's what we're trying to adjust or update or upgrade or whatever, right? And so when I point out some of these things, right, we need to remember Takama Sensei's words, right? That the essence of true ninjutsu is about knowing the unknowable, knowing what most people don't even know exist. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but it's to delve into the unknown. One of my teachers coming up through the ranks, he had us do an exercise, and you can do this as well. I don't know, do I have a blank sheet of paper here? Because I'll hold it up to the screen. Those of you on audio only, I'll just describe it as I go. Some of my students have already done it, right? But if you take a blank piece of paper and just on it, you just draw a big circle, right? So just make a big circle, right? And then what you do is, and again, I'm going to be very generous with this, you cut out a quarter of the pie like that, right? Just cut out a quarter, right? And again, I'm being very, very generous. And then you divide that wedge in half. Okay, I just do it with a dotted line, but you can do it however you want, right? Okay, and then in one section, one of those segments, right, you're going to write the realm of the known, right? The realm of the known, the realm of the known. Okay, in the other segment, you're going to write the realm of the known unknown. I know, so I'm losing some people already, right? So the realm of, so what you have is you got this big circle, right? This big, I don't know, pie or whatever, right? And then it's subdivided. So you've got the realm of the known, and you have the realm of the known unknown. Okay, so Sensei, what the hell's the rest of it for? Well, I'm not there yet. Okay, around the outside of crossing those two segments, right? What we write out is the realm of the known. Well, you just said the same thing twice. No, I didn't. In one segment is the realm of the known. In the other one is the realm of the known unknown. So what you end up with is this, right? So across both segments, what we have is that's the realm of the known, right? These are all of the things that we know. But you said known, unknown. Yeah, I know. Okay. If I say, do you know how to speak Russian? You might say yes. You might say no. Okay. But either way, you either know that you know it or you know that you don't know it. How do I know that? I know that because you identified that Russian is a language. Right? We could do the same thing with Spanish. We could do, whatever. Okay. Do you know how to take up a proper hoi or hoko no kamae? Okay. Some are going to say yes. Some are going to say no. Right. And so, but to answer yes or no, I know how to do that. Right. I know. Right. Or I've heard it, but I don't know it. Or you might even list it there if you, I don't know how to do it very well. Right. So, but either way, I have to know that this thing called hoko no kamae exists. Right? An alternate name is hoi. Don't worry about it. Okay. So you have to know, right? So that's why these are in the realm of the known. Okay. The rest of it, right? The point of training, the point of exploration, the point of mastery, right? Mastery lies in the other 2/3. Okay. So in that part of the circle, we wrote the realm of the unknown. This is the shit we don't even know. We don't even know it exists. Okay. So the point of training, you can see these extra dotted lines I made down here. Where are we? Over here. Okay. So this extra thing, right, is to broaden out the realm. And I know I stuck them both on one side. It's gonna branch in different directions, right? But what I'm doing is diving into the unknown, right? I do that when I go to the dojo, right? And part of the job of the teacher is to expose us to things that we didn't know, right? Like I didn't even know I had that part on my body, let alone it was a pressure point and it could freaking hurt, right? I didn't know that there was this thing called an onikudaki, or how many techniques have you learned, or even if you use terms like, I never thought about it that way. Okay. That was still it wasn't even in the ballpark. Okay. Because it's not until we move something from here into the realm of the known on either side, right, that we can do anything about it. We can do anything with it, right? We can't practice something. We can't make it better. We can't even decide, right? We're in a class and the teacher mentioned something, or you're in one of these KUDEN or Whiteboard Wednesday, whatever, right? Teacher mentioned something about something that you never even knew existed, right? And it gets dropped now into the realm of the known. because now you've been made aware of it. Okay. Like at one point in my life, right? Way back, I learned that there was this language, Hungarian. Interesting. Okay. Now, as soon as I learned that, that goes into the realm of the known. But which part? Well, as soon as I learned about it, right? It obviously goes into the realm of the known unknown, right? I don't know what it sounds like. I don't know how to speak it. I don't know. I don't know how to understand it. Nothing. But once it's in the realm of the known, even though it's a known unknown, right? I now know Hungarian exists. I know I don't know it, but now I can make a rational decision about whether it's something I actually want to study. Right? At a certain point in my life, ninjutsu was an unknown unknown. I had a whole list of martial arts and systems and whatnot that I knew about. Some I had trained in, some I never touched, but I at least knew that they existed and could choose. Do I want to try that out? Do I want to check into it? Do I want to get good at it? Whatever. Okay. James, you can relate to this, right? I mean, at a certain point, you're a certain age and you're watching TV and, you're watching these people fight a certain way, but you don't know what the name of it is, but you at least know there's this, like, what the hell are they doing? Right. So things can be fragmented and whatnot. But the point of this is that it's not, I don't know if you can see this. Well, try to make it darker here, right? This arrow, right? So there's a continual process. I talk about this a little bit in the inner path versus outer code audio program for some of you folks that got the, and I appreciate it, that you got the Seishin Teki Kyoyo book, and then you got the upgrade program. It's kind of like an expansion pack, right? One of the lessons in there, there's like 5 core lessons, not counting the introduction and kind of lead in. One of them was Kaizen, this Kaizen process. It's a process of continual improvement. And so now Kaizen for most people is making improvements in the realm of the known, right? I mean, you already have this stuff. What you might not know is why shit keeps breaking and why efficiency's low or power output is low, even though you think you're doing everything the right way or whatever. But mastery, this is how one of my teachers actually defined, and I believe he ultimately got it from Matsumitsu at one point, but mastery is about discovering things that before that moment to you didn't exist, right? They existed in the world, but they didn't exist to you. So you couldn't do anything with them. You couldn't do anything about them. Okay. This is where people tend to resist things a lot, right? Like, I never heard of that. That doesn't sound right. Right. Or that's, that can't be right. Right. Nobody ever told me about that. Okay. What's my normal response to that, James? Like, nobody ever told me and never thought about it that way, whatever.
Not my fault.
My fault. For people that like to use the, not my fault, that's not my job. That's not, okay. It is my job to now, like, I've made you aware of this thing, right? My job as a teacher, which is really funny because there's lots of people that think they can get around not having a teacher. They can figure it out for themselves. Well, the problem with that is that, again, I was very generous with cutting out a quarter of the pie. And the reason why I did that was because it gave me plenty of room to write in. Okay. I believe that for in the grander context of the universe, right? That sliver would be way, way thin. Okay. But the point of this is, right, the more that we can become aware of, it goes into the realm of the known, right? Of course, we don't know much about it or whatever. We're just introduced to it, whatever. Okay. And then we can decide, right? Do I want to, do I want to get it good at this thing called onikudaki? Anybody ever learned an onikudaki before, or a technique like that? And then your teacher comes along later and goes, okay, so that was omote onikudaki. Okay. There is an ura onikudaki, and it looks like this. Okay. Or I'll stay with onikudaki. And again, for those of you who don't know it, it is a rotational shoulder dislocation, right? The arm is plugged into the shoulder this way. I mean, I understand normally, but what I want you to think about is one of these old Model T cars that were like cranked to get the engine started. And so your arm is positioned like a crank in here. Okay. So when this is rotated, the humerus, this big old bone in your upper arm, right, rotates like an axle in this joint assembly. Okay. I know it doesn't look like that in WWE wrestling because, they're not really blowing people's shoulders apart. Not that people can't be injured. Okay. When people are doing things in training, we're doing the soft stuff. We're trying to protect our partner. I believe that you can do it correctly and still protect your partner. So this thing is in here, right? And so the omote version is the upper arm, right? The one that's going to be controlling this one. So I'm in really, really close. I'm mirroring myself, right? So the arm would be out here, right? So the closer arm goes up and under his upper arm, and then the other arm kind of T-bones the forearm like this. I apologize if you're on audio only. It just go onto YouTube and type in onikudaki, KUDAKI, crushing the demon, or demon crusher, devil crusher, whatever. Okay, so it crosses this way, and then your hands go together, right? Like shaking, not really shaking your own hands, I guess, maybe like peace, love, and brotherhood kind of thing, right? Catch, and then you walk past and lever. So the arm goes this way, right? Ura onikudaki, the closer hand doesn't go under, it goes over, like you're swimming. So it goes over and locks this in, and then the other arm does its thing, right? And then, like, along comes a teacher and goes, so have you ever done it and the person slips their shoulder joint, so you lose that part, but you're kind of stuck in there and you can't reclaim the shoulder, right? I mean, you learn lots of ways to reclaim the shoulder, but maybe I don't have the time, I don't have the space, whatever. So there are versions of onikudaki, and sometimes they come with different names, but we're just going to call it this way because we don't need all these extra names, right? Some people do. It's an ego stroking thing. But it's not about the shoulder, right? There are versions that you can do that dislocate the elbow joint instead. Do tell, right? So, but until that's introduced, never even thought about that. Didn't even know how that would work, right? I just always thought when I had that kind of position, it was wrong. Well, it was wrong because you were working on this particular application, but the more you gain, right? It's like, let me do another little thing here. Hopefully I can make this big enough. You know what? I'll use another piece of paper here. Okay. I'm sure that in your younger days, maybe, I don't know, maybe yesterday, who knows? In your younger days, you did something called a dot to dot, right? These pictures, you get these little dots and they either have letters or numbers attached to them, usually associated with kid stuff, right? So this is something I use with my students on a regular basis, right? Where they're learning the techniques, so they're learning these little pieces to go along with things, right? And so let me add one more here. Okay. So I show them a dot to dot that looks like this, and I go, great, what's the picture? And, the brain starts swimming and, flag, whatever, right? They can start coming up with all kinds of ideas. And then I'll go, let me add a couple more, right? And so if we have these, right, we start getting more, right? And then, then it maybe becomes more clear, whatever, right? And let's see. So we start looking at things. We're like, oh, see, now it's starting to look like a house. Oh, okay. Well, let me give you like, 2 more, 3 more, something like that, right? All right. Okay. So now what could it be? Oh, wow. Right. So the more these dots you have, you don't even need to freaking trace it to get the picture. It just starts to kind of come out, right? Because you have more reference points that the mind can join together. And we call them options, call them techniques, call them skills, call them whatever you want. Uh, the more that gets added, the more that comes out of the realm of the unknown, right? Because there was a whole bunch of white space there, right? It could be a whole lot of things, but if there's only a right answer, right? I'm going to need some more reference points, or I'm going to need, like in some of these little smaller children's books, you get some dots and all that, but then there's some, there's some drawing pieces that kind of go together, and then the child's dot to dot tracing kind of completes things, right? So that's like a huge part of this process, right? And so when we're doing these, right, when we're pointing out, or we're doing something, especially on the mind side of training, okay, um, the more we can know about, one, what we can do, or what potentials we have within us, but we didn't grow up with people or never bumped into anyone or whatever that highlighted these things or even mentioned them, right? We're never going to be able to do anything with them. We're never going to be able to do anything about them. It's kind of like these guys that will post in comments under technique videos or whatever, right? Like I'm doing something with a lapel grab or a sleeve grab or a wrist grab or whatever, and their common response is, I can't think of ever a time in my life where somebody ever grabbed me or I grabbed somebody like that. Or, okay, again, what's my response? Not my fault. Okay. But they wouldn't be out there, right? Coincidentally or ironically, I don't know, pick the right word. How to defend against a fill in the blank grab. I think wrist grab is number one, but how to defend against a clothing grab, wrist grab, those kind of things. These rank among the highest searches in the self-defense realm on YouTube. Okay. So that has nothing to do with whether or not I've ever been grabbed. I have, in many different ways and in many different places. Okay. Or anything like that. Has nothing to do with anything other than, does my experience or does my knowledge or whatever already give me a leg up to get me started? Okay. Because I don't want to make a promise, but I'm pretty sure that there can't be that many people looking for something that they've never seen or aren't worried about. We tend to not search for information online on Google or YouTube or whatever for shit we don't know exists or that we've never seen or that we're not worried about, or right. It's not the way it works. Okay. So anyway, one of the reasons for sticking with a lot of this mental stuff is that there's a lot that a lot of folks haven't been made aware of, right? Or have not bumped into. Another subject that came up in class tonight was about this one program that I'll be re-releasing here pretty soon. We haven't promoted it or anything in quite a while. I call it Bushi no Mei, right? Bushi no Mei. Bushi, warrior, right? No is a connector that means of or from in this context. And Mei is the same as Gan, right? We could also call it Butsugan, I, right? Mei, I, same kanji for I, right? So eye or eyes of the warrior. And I don't know, there's like 5 or 7 layers or whatever. I have to review the program before we even re-release it. But it starts with something called Nekugan, right? And again, lots of names across different lineages, different areas, whatever. Okay? Nekugan, right? Neku means naked. Okay? Nekugan, naked eye. Okay. It's not like your eyes aren't dressed. Okay. It's not that kind of thing, right? Nekugan points to your eyeball / optic nerve / sight center in the brain, operating with no help or no processing from the neocortex or the upper layers of the brain and whatnot that translate any of the stuff that's coming through. Okay, it's understanding how the eyeball works, right? Which is really important if you're going to be studying stealth or any kind of deceptive tactics, um, where you want to conceal certain moves or to confuse him because of the interplay between light and shadow, right? And how that can adjust or warp uh, visual acuity, sharpness, and detail, or depth perception. Cool shit, right? You don't need blinding powders to affect somebody's sight. But understanding how the eyeball works, right? Light comes through the lens, and hits the retina in the back, which converts it into an electrical impulse that sends it along the optic nerve, right? That goes to the brain, triggers an electrical storm, which in itself triggers chemical processes, which affect other electrical storms that feed back things to other parts of the brain, get processed a different way, and then things go to the hypothalamus and muscles start moving, kind of thing, right? Or other mental images or ideas start forming. Okay, it's a whole process with this, but Nekugan is none of that other processing. It's simply the way the eye functions and understanding how that works. Okay. And again, we know way more about the way the eye works than they did way back in the day. But it was the ability to just let the eye work and to understand that the eye works all the time, regardless of whether your eyelids are open or closed. Like when your eyelids close, it doesn't flip a switch and turn your eyeballs off. Okay. You can, you know how it works. Right. We've got blackout curtains in my house and stuff. So that, like, we, want to sleep in on a weekend morning, or who knows? My wife works odd hours. I can stay up until 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the friggin' morning trying to get a project done, and then sleep in later and whatnot. So, but if you're looking at a direct light, even with your eyes closed and whatnot, you can see, right, that things are going on, or you can touch your eyelid and put a little bit of pressure on your eye and make these weird designs and crap like that that's going on in there, right? Because you have this fluid inside your eye. And anyway. But it starts with that, and then it works through sight consciousness, and then a bunch of layers of connection and disconnection and whatnot, to be able to better use the sense of sight as a combat tool. Okay, this is so important that in the Gyokoryu, right, the Kyonapo, not the techniques. Okay, that we call the Kyonapo. These are 8 study areas within the Gyokoryu, known as the Kyonapo, right? These are the 8 foundations or 8 fundamentals that are non-negotiable. They all get studied, okay? And one of them is called Ganho, okay? Way of the eyes, or eye way, which means to study how the eyes work, right? How they work, how light and shadow affects things, how the eyes can be deceived, all those kind of things, right? So this program isn't something that I just kind of threw together. However, I did put it together based on lessons and instructions that I got long before I knew that in the Gyokoryu there was this area of study called Ganho. Okay. But again, these are non-negotiable things. Most people don't even know they exist. So how do you study something? How do you get really, really good at something? How do you increase your advantage by adding something to your freaking toolbox that would make every technique better, more deceptive, all those, if you don't know that there's more than just like, I open my eyes, I can see. I close my eyes, I can't see. Okay. It just, okay. Again, I'm trying to invoke some levity here, but I think you get the idea, right? So, the gist of this, when I point these things out, that we're going to take a look at something that is a huge missing element that most people don't even know about. Most fighters don't know about. Most self-defense, most martial artists don't know about. It's not criticizing. It's actually pointing out something that, like, if we could learn this, I want you to think about this. People want to have the biggest edge against the worst possible attacker. But you don't get there by doing the same shit everybody else is doing, only better. Because then you have to hope that on that given day, you were in top shape and you were better, or based on the attacker that's coming, you're already better, or they've never seen it, or whatever, right? Generally doesn't work out well that way. Right? So what we're looking at doing is the more things that we can uncover that most people have no idea exists. And you'll know that because if you just got introduced to it, what are the chances? Okay. And the more of those that you have, and the more of those things that you can use, oh shit, they can't keep up. Okay. So this is living to, like, we can read Grandmaster's quotes. We can read Hatsumi Sensei's quotes. We can pass them around, share them, all kinds of things. Takama Sensei's quotes. And they all sound good on the surface, but until we realize that we're translating them based on our level of understanding, not on that Grandmaster's level of understanding, then there's a lot of work to be done. There was a what the hell was he? He was a author. He was some people call him a philosopher and stuff. There's this guy named was it Bertrand Russell, James? I quote him quite a bit. He once said that it's impossible, and I don't know, he might have used the word idiot or whatever, average person. I'll keep it an average person, right? It's impossible for an average person to properly translate the instructions or the sayings or anything of a genius, because they will always process it through their level of understanding. So when Hatsumi Sensei says, "Do you understand?" and we nod, okay, what we're acknowledging is that I understand what you're saying based on my reference points, experience, knowledge, and ability to understand. Okay. But that's also why he laughs afterwards. Okay. So they also trust. And that's why, again, in this inner path, outer code audio program, there was a lesson on this Kaizen, because Kaizen, and I think I tied that. I did. I tied that to one of Hatsumi Sensei's lesson, which is return to zero. Okay. Returning to zero isn't just like Zen's emptying your cup and those kind of things. It points more to getting to a point where you're pure potential, right? And so you can operate at a very different level because you have a whole bunch of options, and you're not a one-hit wonder. You're not a one style person, right? So anyway, all right, James, based on those ramblings, before I pull up my major notes for this episode, any comments, questions, bullshit remarks? I think you filter those out, so less than usable.
A few more people checked in. Dave, Maui, Terrence, Ian, and Terrence asked a question. Do you have any suggestions for cultivating the mindset of Mushin?
Mushin is in no mind. Yeah. The first one is to stop the internal chatter. Do a bunch of Zen, or what in Tendai we call Shikan meditation. You have to quiet the chatter. Okay? Just had a conversation with my wife over this past weekend, because I'll be looking around or I might even be looking at her, and she'll say, "What are you thinking?" Nothing. But she thinks I'm being like a guy who is thinking something but won't say it because it'll get him in trouble or whatever. There's no words going on, right? That doesn't mean that there's no mental processing going on, right? But there are no thoughts. There's nothing. I'm not on the thought train riding somewhere. I'm not a million miles away. That stare, right? Where somebody's just, their eyes are fixed, but they're a million miles away from the room that they're in, right? It's not that. It's just, you know, I'm not trying to follow the instructions. I'm trying to live these lessons. And so in Tendai, in Tendai Mikyo, we have this sutra teaching called the Lotus Sutra. It's one of many, but in it there's instructions for uh, when you stand, when you sit, sit, when you walk, walk. Either way, don't wobble, that kind of thing, right? And I'm paraphrasing, but the gist is whatever you're doing, do that thing, so you're 100% in the moment. Okay, be authentic. There's all kinds of words to describe these things, right? For my students that have heard me say this over and over again, one of the goals of just kamae training, right, is getting to a point where you stop doing the kamae and you actually become the kamae, right? You are that defensive or aggressive or whatever action. Just in You're just doing that thing. By not doing that thing, you are that thing. Okay, because the kamae are holistic, right? They're not just these physical things, right? Um, so when I'm shifting back in the kamae, right, I'm evading the incoming attack, or I am uh, let's say grabs me and I'm shifting back to stretch him out and whatnot, right? So there's so much about the kamae that has to be right for those things to happen in a way that where the kamae itself is the weapon, it's the tool, right? That your left brain just can't do all those things, right? So I simply know I need to move away from him, stretch him out, and bring my weapons to bear. And there's a kamae that just happens to do that, right? So I do that thing, right? Well, Sensei, you said that we're supposed to be breaking their balance on 3 lines. I am, right? I'm falling away from them, which stretches them out. I'm sinking, right? Which brings the hand and therefore the shoulder and the whole chain of events in their body at a weird angle, disconnected from the plane of the ground and their hips, right? And there's a timing element to that, right? That the Japanese don't have a word for timing, which is why when you hear Western translators or English translators translate Hatsumi Sensei's words, you'll hear timing gu and things like that, because I don't have a word for timing. Timing is related to motion and rhythm, and just there's several different ways to look at this. Ritsudo, and it's all kinds of things, right? So anyway, so I am breaking multiple, right? But again, everything has to be working correctly. And again, these things come up in class a lot. James, this is like, hearing the same shit over and over again. He wishes I would say something different. But it's not going to happen because until people get it right, I have to keep repeating myself. The average, not the average person, right? The person who still has this over in the realm of the unknown, right? And see, this is one of those little gray areas, because they know they don't know it. They just have never thought about it before. So in that case, this is over in that dark corner of the world where it might as well not exist, or may as well not exist. And that is that you can only see maybe 10% of what a teacher is demonstrating. I don't give a shit if it's a YouTube video, if you're in one of my classes, if you're watching Hatsumi Sensei, whatever. And it's not that, they're so high above everyone that you can't understand. No, this is just pure reality check fact. You can only see 10% because everybody's looking at extremities, body parts, right? And what those things are doing, you can't see on the other side of the skin bag, which means you can't see how the muscles are firing, what exactly they're doing, what combinations of muscles are firing. That's going to think. What you see is the end result of shit that happens on the inside and comes out, right? You can't see what they're looking at. You can't see what they see and what they're processing and how they're prioritizing things. You can't feel what they feel, right? Pressure wise or whatever that causes them to move in a certain direction. Okay. These are all things that have to be explored. These are all things that have to be, right? And so there is this, there are all these Sheen things. Okay. Mushin, here's something I would say, because we've been talking about some of these things last episode or 3 or whatever, right? Been talking about Fudoshin, immovable mind, immovable heart, right? So I stay calm under pressure. Okay. Mushin, right? No thought. Mushin is everything from no internal chatter getting in my way to no assumptive thinking, right? In some cases, can be called transference. Right? In psychology, transference is we as individuals transfer onto another individual or group of individuals our beliefs or fears or the way we would do something or whatever. And then we make this assumption that they're thinking, feeling, processing, or whatever the exact same way. Okay? But we don't know anything about how different personality types, how different people from different backgrounds, different upbringings, all kinds of things, right? And how that creates very different perspectives. Like even if you don't use the 6 realms that we use in Mikyo. That's a really old personality typing system. And let's say you use the what is it, the Meyer, I don't know, something like that, right? It was one of these things that I think there's like 16 personality types. Okay, 2 or 3 of those, an element within them is paranoia. Okay, they're always worried what somebody else is thinking or how they might be being judged or whatever, right? I'm not that personality type, so when somebody says, "Aren't you worried about?" No, okay. Yeah, but you do certain things at the dojo to present a good image or whatever. I mean, you got to be, worried about judgment. See, what I'm looking at is things that would turn off the perfect avatar parent, specifically moms, who would like our program and really want that kind of thing for their children. But moms are more critical of cleanliness and orderliness within a given environment, right? Guys, guys would train in a garage with oil stains all over them, most, right? Because they don't care, okay? But moms been around for a week or 3 and look around. There's like cobwebs, things like that. That starts to speak of a lack of discipline, lack of self control. Well, but you teach that the martial arts will help your kid with self-discipline, and they may not identify that way, but these things start to build up and see. And then there's things that speak to other things, right? I have certain Asian decorations or certain things in the dojo, one because they're teaching aids, and 2 because the primary adult avatar, male or female, that gets involved in our training, is turned on by some of those things. Right, our logo was designed based on some of those things. The colors were chosen, the elements and whatnot, not because I thought they were cool, but because I did study into the psychology of how these things get translated by certain people, and then I studied my best students over time, and if I want to duplicate people just like that, and take the sniper rifle approach to promoting the school and attracting just the right kind of students, as opposed to the shotgun approach. And then I can't figure out why I get some, but not others. And then those some that I get don't stay for very long. Or right. I want to find the same type of people, right? They have a certain type of personality. They have certain concerns. They have certain things that turn them on, turn them off, or whatever. Okay. Uh, there's certain no-nos, right? Like I typically don't use the term sign up for any given thing. Okay. Sometimes we do, but it's once people get in the dojo and they know what we mean. But I don't use the word sign up because, especially up front, right? Or we call things membership agreements and not contracts. Okay. Because of the association these people tend to have with business people, salespeople, that kind of thing, and their mistrust for people in that realm and whatnot, right? So, right, we there's certain vocabulary, right? Again, this is all part of Kyu's Tenkan, okay? And I'm not talking about disguising truth and falsehood. I'm talking about adjusting myself so that I can help them with clarity in determining whether or not this is the right program for them, not convincing them to say yes, right? Not that kind of bullshit, right? Because that only lasts for so long, right? And to keep them from mistranslating things a certain way, right? Until we've had a chance to pre or reframe them about what those things mean here or in the context of this learning process, as opposed to what they might think it means based on just kind of bouncing around the world. Okay. I don't use the word Buddhism early on and in general circulation because people already think they know what it is. And the more religiously oriented they are, the more that term is going to be a turnoff, as opposed to saying that we're studying universal truth or relative truth, or we're studying the process through clarity and those kind of things. Or I'll use the term Mikyo because that's more vague to people, and because they bumped into it in the ninjutsu realm and its association with mental training and personal development training. See, I'll use that. Okay, but until somebody understands something from a clearer position, I don't trust leaving things to vagueness, or just assuming that because I know what it means, that they automatically know what it means. Okay, so anyway, all right, James, anything on that before we jump into things? Because I really want to spend a good deal of time on this Zanshin tonight, but anyway, or in this episode, sorry. Some of you are listening in the middle of the morning or midday or whatever.
No, that was everything.
Okay, cool. All right, so let me bring up my notes. Excellent. All right, so okay, so my focus is going to be across a couple of different mindsets. And I've covered them in the past, but we can study these things all we want. We need to kind of separate these between what's the ideal, what's the goal, and what's the reality about where we are in any given moment. Okay. So the primary element that I really want to focus on is adaptability. Okay. The biggest missing thing across martial arts, yep, including mixed martial arts, okay, is adaptability. Because even in the realm of mixed martial arts, people still tend to gravitate to what they like, what they're good at, right? I'm a good wrestler, so I'll use striking and kicking to set them up for this so I can, right? Or I'm a good puncher kicker, so if I have to use grappling or whatever, it's going to have to be to get off of their holds or to get them into a position to, whatever, and then I can get a knockout in or whatever, okay? So even when we think we're adaptable, okay, a question we need to ask ourselves is how many different types of situations, not how many situations, okay, not how many fights have you been in, not how many self-defense situations you've been in, how many different types of fights? Have you been in fights that involve weapons? Have you been in fights that involve specific types of weapons, right? Have you ever dealt with a knife? Have you ever dealt with a gun? Have you ever dealt with somebody swinging a baseball bat, pull cue, whatever? Okay. Have you ever had somebody come up and choke you from behind? Have you ever had somebody lay hands on you? And I don't mean punching, right? Have you ever had like a wrestler, shoot fighter, whatever, somebody is just like absolutely enraged, just tackle you to the ground, right? Have you ever had somebody who's really, really good at Taekwondo trying to kick your head off? And I don't mean, well, I guess it could be you were in a Taekwondo class as well. Okay. Um, have you ever been in an actual fight or attack situation that wasn't limited to this back and forth, eye to eye, nose to nose, toe to toe kind of thing? Right. But there was circling that went on. You know, people were picking up shit and throwing it. Right. Backing into a corner. Have you been in a multiple attacker scenario? Right. 2-on-1, 3-on-1, 4-on-1, 3-on-2, whatever. Okay. Have you been in those that where a weapon suddenly came into play? Right. It was unarmed at first, or at least it appeared that way. Next thing you know, shit. Somebody's got a stick, somebody's got a knife, whatever. So I'm not talking about the number of fights somebody's been in, right? Because that's kind of like it's kind of like people who are on a work a job, and some people might be able to relate to this, but you know, you're working at who knows, you're working at a company, factory, office, whatever, right? And a job comes open, and you know, there's this written or unwritten rule in the company that you know, if people from inside apply for the job, people with seniority get preferential treatment. Like if there's a, you know, somebody's been on the job for 20 years, somebody's been on the job for 6 months, the guy with 20 years is getting the job because of seniority, which I think is absolutely bullshit. Because if it's a supervisor's job, if it's a executive job, if it's something in another tier, another section of the business, what the hell does somebody having 20 years on the job working in one department doing one particular job, how does that make them qualified to do an admin job? Or how does that, right? Where's the connection, right? But that's not even where it stops for me. Okay. So, and also, you'll see the martial arts or the self-defense tie-in here in just a minute. So you have somebody who is, they've been on the job for 20 years, but let's say that the first 6 months they were on the job, they were all like gung ho and they were learning different things and how to do different, you know, whatever. Right. And then for the remainder of the 19 years and 6 months, they've been doing the job and they've gotten really good at, you know, streamlining things and being able to do that really, really well and be able to take 15 extra fucking coffee breaks during a day or smoke breaks or whatever. But the learning and the willingness to learn, that ran out, right? 6 months in. But here you got somebody that has only been around for 6 months or a year or 2 years, right? And they're constantly learning, right? They want to know how like everything works, or they're taking extra, what do you call those things? Night courses, or what the hell are those courses called? You don't have to actually go to school. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So they're in a constant learning mode. Okay. And so they're going to get passed over by somebody who has 6 months of experience 40 times, as opposed to a learning experience 40 times, as opposed to somebody who has 6 months or a year or 2 years or whatever experience and learning, and it's continuous, right? So that's the thing. You can base it on the comments in the videos. You can base it on things that fall out of people's mouths. And this is one of those things that I discuss in the Seishin Teki Kyoyo book. I think it's in the Heijoshin section, where it's this common everyday mind kind of thing, where you are, you could be listening to what other people are saying because you're assessing what their baseline is. And that helps you develop a strategy because most people are creatures of habit and they don't change. They don't change quickly. They don't change well, right? They lack adaptability. So you'll hear people say things like, that'll never happen or that doesn't work in a real fight. And I challenge these people. Now, I don't do it directly. What I'll say is, I'm sorry that like it didn't work out well for you when you tried to use it. I'd never use anything like that. Well, I'm sorry that you learned it for nothing. I never learned it, and I would never. Wait a minute. Okay, so you're gonna see, and this is just ego screaming, right? And see, I love it. I love to engage in dialogue like that because as a ninja, right? This is application of Kyujutsu Tenkan. Okay, the juxtaposition of truth and falsehood. Okay, to them, I sound like a moron. But what I'm doing is I'm validating that they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And they get to tell me that. Never learned it, never tried it, believe it doesn't work. What did they just tell me? I know nothing about this thing that you're going to apply to me. I don't know anything about it. I don't know how you would enter to do it. I don't know what that feels like. I don't know, how it gets applied. So how I can beat it. Nothing. Which means it's going to be an absolute freaking surprise when I whip that on somebody. Awesome. You just keep telling me all the things that you don't know about this thing and how it's in the realm of the unknown. It's barely in the realm of the known. All you know about it is you've never seen it. It's bullshit because you've never done it and nobody else has ever done it to you and nobody else has ever done it that you've seen. Great. We call those people intentional idiots, right? I know nothing about it and I'm perfectly content with that. Okay. Not in the ninja's toolbox, right? So again, this keeps playing into things because if I said that most techniques, when I say most, I mean like 99.9 techniques that you're ever going to see your teacher demonstrate, you only see 10% of it at best, right? Because we can't see the rest of it. Okay. So if we can't see that much of physical techniques, how much of the mental stuff can't we see? Okay. And this goes right back to most martial artists train for fights. Okay. But what happens when survival depends not on your technique, but on your mindset? Okay. There was a quote that I used from Takamatsu Sensei. I think maybe last episode, I've been using it in class quite a bit, that if the mind is not prepared, right? If the mind is not adaptable, if the mind is not ready, that kind of thing, under extreme pressure, the body will crumble, no matter how good the techniques are. Right? And that's been our whole premise, right? So, but the primary thing here is we're going to be looking at adaptability and what that means. But today we're going to take not just an inner look, like we're looking at the mind, okay? Zanshin, this lingering mind, this type of awareness that is on and focusing before, during, after, that kind of thing. But we're going to go inside. We're going to go inner awareness, right? So up to this point, we've been talking about Zanshin, as in paying attention to him, the environment, those kind of things, before, after, not dropping your guard too soon, those kind of things. I'm going to take a look at Zanshin from the perspective of us paying attention to us, okay, and shifting conditions, okay, because this is going to be a key factor in certain ways to use Kyujutsu Tenkan or to recognize. Right, to Terrence's question, when Mushin, right, this no mind is not occurring, right? A big thing for, I'll just mention this just to give Terrence one other thing. A big thing with Mushin that a lot of folks don't get, right? Because no mind just sounds like you're in this open kind of thing. You're not getting in your own way, no mental chatter. But right, Mushin also points to not assuming that he will do certain things, not guessing. I mentioned transference before, so not these things happening. Okay. Mushin is a part of a concept that comes out of Shinden Furoryu. It's actually in all of them, but this is one of those big primary kind of things, right? Um, uh, and there's also the name of a kamai, at least one, that's associated with your hanbo training. It's called munen muso. Okay? Munen muso. So munen is another way to look at mushin. Okay, munen translates to no mind. Muso translates to no action. Right. So muso, uh, you know, munen muso no kamai. You got this your hanbo or jo or whatever in a vertical position, single handed. You're just standing in what looks like shizen. Okay, which points to a lot that goes on in shizen, because shizen no kamai can also be called munen muso no kamai. Okay, but it can't be called that until a way higher level, right? So, um, muso means no action, but what the hell does that mean? Okay, well, you're not moving. That's not what it means, right? How the hell are you going to get out of the way of an incoming attack if you're not going to move? Well, that's stupid. Okay, so let's try again, right? We can directly translate certain things, but we don't know what's being implied or what the strategy is that they borrowed this simple term to put on there. Then again, we're fishing, right? We think we know, right? But it's not really in the realm of the known. We're operating on assumptions and not the actual thing. The actual thing is still residing in the realm of the unknown unknown. And until we uncover that and get over our own BS, because that's the shortcut to feeling like we know everything, then we have a problem. Okay. So muso means I'm not doing anything to project tells or any kind of clues to him about what I may or may not do in any given moment. It's remaining in it's not just a neutral position, because I can take up any kamai, but I'm not like when he flinches, I don't like my body doesn't tell he's about to cut to the right. Okay. Or he's about to go forward or back up or okay. There's no tells. Okay. Um, and this requires a study. For those who really want to go deep on it, requires a study into body language, facial microexpression, uh, uh, um, eye movement, those kind of things, because what's going on inside head and heart, right, will cause these things to happen involuntarily. Okay. So we really do have to be still on the inside for this to actually happen. So what's not moving is on the inside, because by the time the body does it, the body's telling what's going on the inside, right? To study kamai is a study in body, mind, spirit connection, body language, all kinds of things. Okay. So muso's fairly the easy one, right? You're not conveying any tells. You're not flinching in a given direction that, why would he come straight at your center line when he's already picking up that you're going to cut to the right. So he'll just cut, he'll come in, initially, right? His first move looks like he's coming in straight, and then he'll just veer it off to his left, your right, so that you run into it, right? Because you're going to move as soon as he farts anyway. Not you, because you guys are enlightened masters, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Okay. So, but munen, no thought. This is about not guessing. This is about not assuming. It's remaining still. It's a still mind that watches what's going on. It's not waiting for something specific so I can do something. It's not watching for something specific because he's a certain type of stylist. It's not, okay? Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but until he gives me that thing, right? And I don't move, and together I don't move just because he starts moving, which gives him time to steer and right. So if he's trying to punch me in the head, he wants to punch me in the head. Doesn't matter where my head is in space. He's trying to punch me in the head. So if I move too soon and his body is physiologically able to steer on the fly, he's going to land the shot. Okay. So this is why we have last second timing, those kind of things. But I need to practice, right? So I can watch it come in. Granted, that punch is going to get from the start where he is to me in about 200ths of a second. So just under a quarter of a second. But isn't it a great thing that this function that we're trying to hone and develop isn't in the neocortex that needs more time? Right? It's in lower survival functions. Okay. So, but what I have to do is stop the chatter, because the chatter is in the higher functions that take longer to process things. Okay. What Zen, Shikan, Munen training, these kind of things all do is get the higher order, I'm a smart human being, shit out of the way, so that the functions that are for survival can do their thing and not be clouded. Right. So, again, my premise through this, right, is we've been talking about this for a while, right? True ninja didn't just train for physical skills, right? They trained their mindset. We know this, right? They trained their mindset, but the question is, mindset is a vague term, right? What the hell does that look like, right? They trained their mindset to survive the unpredictable chaos of real violence, right? Most people train as though they're always going to be in control. Most people train based on a deconstruction or reconstruction or a reverse engineering of kata. And kata leads you down the false belief trail that you're always going to win. Because kata are presented in a way where you win. You win when the conditions are right, your timing was right, those kind of things, right? But what happens when things get knocked off track? Okay? One of the things that that I had to do through, we'll call it Henka training, but it's not the way most people think of it. It was kata training, but it was upper level stuff where there is a logic that you're using. You need this person in a certain position. This needs to be finished in a certain way. And I get it. Most people don't need this, right? As a police officer and as a counterterrorist specialist and whatnot, way back in the day, I did, right? Most people just need this guy down, or they need a hit and run tactic where they get the hell out, whatever. Okay. But for those who need greater control, or, the guy breaks into your house and you're going to pin him down and hold him till the cops get there. Okay. Then we might need to call our shots a whole lot better than just, playing sluggo and, walking away like, oh, I won and he lost, and never giving any thought to the fact that he's going to go get 4 of his friends and come back and surround the place. And, anyway. So, one of the training things that we had to do, and this is coming up on the black belt curriculum as well pretty soon, is that we can be doing a kata and we get knocked off track. Okay. He does something to counter something that we're doing, countering one of the moves or 2 of the moves or whatever. Right. And it's one thing for him to counter it and it knocks the kata off track, and we're able to resolve things and just bring it to an end. Great. Fantastic. Okay. It's a basic Nidan kind of idea for my guys, right? 8th, 9th Dan, if you're in the general Bujinkan system, up until, well, at least the new year, because I don't know what the new Soke are doing with testing and standards. But another more advanced way to do things is we get knocked off track, and we might get knocked off track for 1, 2, 3, 4 moves, whatever, right? And we do things in a way that brings everything back so that the kata can be finished or ended the way it was originally supposed to end as an ideal, right? So now that's a whole different can of worms, right? That's a Nidan Sandan kind of thing, again, in my curriculum, where it's not just go with the flow and end it any way you need to. I need this person in a certain position. I need him face down in an ogyaku or restrained so that he and I can wait till the cops show up, or I can get him into cuffs or whatever, right? So, again, it's one thing early on to get derailed and adapt to what he's doing. So I just, whatever you do is cool with me, dude. All right, I can string my basics together in an unbroken flow and and finish things, right? It's a whole different thing to have a strategy where I need this guy face down in a restraint position or in a control position, right? And so we get knocked off track, or he's in my house. He's only in the foyer, the entryway, right? And I'm trying to get him back out the door. He does something to counter. I do a bonehead move or whatever. And suddenly we're in my living room off the foyer. And now instead of being 3 steps to getting him back out the door, we're 15 steps from getting him back out the door. Okay. Before we get to 15 steps, how do I choose my techniques? How do I adapt to what he's doing? What kind of things he's throwing at me to get him turned around, or to get him falling or stumbling or whatever back in that direction and get back on track, because there was an original intent. There was an original strategy involved. And it's just like in the military. Any of my vet friends or students or anybody that can relate to this, right? If the mission is to take that hill, right? You take the hill, right? We might have to change angles, whatever, right? But we're taking a lot of fire and whatnot. So instead of changing direction, instead of calling in artillery, instead of calling in an airstrike, whatever, let's take that house over there instead. Well, that's not going to accomplish the strategic mission, or the reason why the hill had to be taken, right? So again, there's a lot more to this. Okay, so again, ultimately, what we're always talking about here is unpredictable chaos that is a real attack, a violent attack. I understand that sport and competitive ring things, even the bullshit that goes on, the high school fights that I remember happening, or bar fights or whatever. While there is a level of unpredictability, it's not a self-defense situation. It's a mutually agreed upon fight. And generally speaking, these people tend to do the same thing. Okay? Not always, but they tend to do the same thing, and often the same way. So not extreme, barely unpredictable, right? Chaos, yeah, some, right? But at what point can a physical attack turn into one with weapons? Or what if the guy already, there's the attack from behind, and there's already the necktie or the belt or the garrote or of some sort or whatever already around your neck and whatnot. Okay, so again, we're continuing this journey, right? Why mastering mental skills is just as critical as learning physical techniques, right? Especially when we're focusing on real world self-defense. Okay. So hopefully so far we've had a chance to see at least some of these things that are on my to-do list, right? Understanding why most martial artists unknowingly train for the wrong kind of fight. Okay. Spend a lot of time training on handling the physical assault, but the fight that's going on between their own ears, or the fight that is going on because of his intimidation tactics, or the either the tunnel vision, we're not paying attention to the unknown in the environment, or paranoia, or as soon as the technique starts to go awry, right, panic or whatever sets in, next thing you know, we're back to street fighting 101 instead of all this stuff we've spent time, effort, and money for decades learning, right? I've already talked about this hidden skill, right, that I wanted to talk about, right, that allows you to win before the fight even starts. It's having plenty of options and the ability to adapt, right? But we have to this is not adapting and changing things just for the sake of adapting. It's not Henka for the sake of Henka, right? This changing, right? It's not just to be tricky. Okay? It's knowing when. Okay. And the big thing here that we'll talk about here in a minute is how your internal awareness directly influences your ability to adapt and survive under pressure. Okay. Because pressure creates tunnel vision. Tunnel vision is a product of of faculties or functions in the mind being overwhelmed, either being overwhelmed because too much data is coming in, or they're overwhelmed and they shut down or they lock up because the conscious mind is trying to do the sorting and it's adding shit to the mix. And then we end up glitching, right? We end up, the brain stalls. Okay. So again, we'll keep working through this, but while I'm fishing through the rest of my notes here, James, questions, comments, complaints? Everybody went home.
Trinity said framing is so important when teaching. To foster understanding, you must first foster acceptance, or rather openness.
And that acceptance is a big thing because huge mindset here. Accepting the reality of the situation. But what is it that we're accepting, right? Not just that I'm being attacked, because if we're stuck in the what's going on, what's happening, oh my God, and trying to sort out that kind of thing, that's problematic. Okay, that's I don't think I need to teach on that. But a big thing, and this plays into Terrence's question about Mushin, and plays into several of these mindsets. But what are the things that we need to accept so that we don't get in our own way? We have to accept that this person wants to beat, break, or kill me. Okay, I get that, right? The sooner we can get past I don't know if this is a fight where this guy's looking for bragging rights, right? Or he's looking to beat, break, or kill me. So I have to accept, and my training needs to reflect this. I don't know what his intentions are. I don't know how far he's willing to go. I don't know how much experience he has at this. I don't know what allies or hidden weapons he might already have. But see, people tend to train like the thing he throws is the only thing I have to deal with, and I get him on the ground, and it's a cool deal. Okay, really? Well, shit. It's a good thing everything's choreographed, right? But there's a lot of things that the first thing we have to accept is there's like 90 to 99% of this whole freaking engagement that I know nothing about. Okay. I have to accept the fact that I know three things. I know that he wants to hurt me to some degree. I don't know what his agenda is. I don't know if he's targeting me yet. Nothing. Right. I know that he wants to hurt me. Two, I know what techniques I own. Not what I've learned, not what I'm still working on, the ones I own, right? I know those, okay? And this is going to play into a big part here coming up. I know how I feel. And I don't mean emotion-wise. I don't mean that I feel committed or I feel... Now, could be anger, could be some of these higher order emotions, but it could also just be that defensive and the body's pulling away. It could be I feel anxious, and so like I'm kind of all over the place, right? Not sure yet, quite yet, right? What to do? So I'm kind of scattered or confused, that kind of thing. I could feel like seriously, that's your plan, okay? Am I supposed to be afraid? And this is not a mental, like, I'm going to convince him this. Okay. We'll get to that one in a minute. Right. This is an authentic knowing. Okay. Could be anger. It could just be that fear induced. I got to get him first, or I got to get through him because the damn door's over there, or whatever. Okay. I know, right? Because we can train all day long, right? For Fudoshin, I remain calm and immovable, right? I can train for Mushin, being clear and just observant and those kind of things, unclouded mind, those kind of things, right? I can train for Heijoshin, right? Where this is just like any other thing that goes on in my day, right? Common everyday mind. So it's not out of the ordinary. But the reality is that emotions are natural, and whatever variables are going on, including him or what he looks like he's going to come in to do or whatever, and how that is being processed consciously or unconsciously based on what I think I know how to deal with it, or his size or scars on his face or whatever, right? That's going to trigger certain emotions. And so Fudoshin and Mushin and all these things are ideals. And it's great, right? By all means, start to train with them. But if you think that that's the quick route to success, I have some swampland in Florida that's owned by a dope smoking alligator friend of mine that I'd love to sell you, because that's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen anytime soon. So the shortcut is being aware of our state, being aware of our condition, which is another way to translate kamai, being aware of one's condition. Okay. So let's back up here a minute and we'll take a look at this survival skill again that most martial artists ignore. Okay. So big common mistake. Martial artists train for a quote unquote fair fight scenario. Balanced stance, proper distance, predictable moves, that kind of thing, right? Even the way people practice their bag work and all that. Okay. I got to tell you, and this is from experience, from early childhood all the way through my cop days and in between and a little bit after, until I don't know, maybe this stuff started to settle in and bad guys went away. They didn't go away. I fell off their radar maybe. Okay. So this what I need to say is that real world violence is chaotic. Right? It's messy. It's fast paced. Right. Oh, and for those of you who didn't get the memo, your attacker doesn't follow rules. Rules of conduct are for the folks that don't want to be causing collateral damage. Like we, relatively speaking, under pressure, count rounds and make sure of our backdrop so that we don't like have the bullet pass through the bad guy and kill somebody else across the way or whatever. Right? Bad guys don't give a shit about any of that stuff. They don't care about like running out of ammo because their boss is going to buy them more, or they've already accepted that they're going to die anyway or could die anyway. There's a whole bunch of things that we have to accept that, and we also have to accept that they've probably set up the scenario way ahead of where we are mentally in time and space. Okay. They've already chosen the entry route. So by the time they're in front of you, right, they're way ahead of the game. They have the battlefield map, they have the agenda, they have the hills that need to be taken, all that kind of stuff, right? And we could luck out and hope that it's just because he's having a fucking bad day, and he thought I looked at him cross-eyed. Because if it's anything worse than that, and he's a hunter, he's this is a predator prey scenario kind of thing. We're already at a negative. So for everybody that doesn't like algebra, let me tell you how much negative numbers really work. Okay, because you're going to have to neutralize things and get this situation to zero before you can even move it into the positive. Okay, so the key concept here is that your greatest weapon is not your fist, your onikudaki, your blade, whatever it is. It is your ability to think clearly, make decisions fast, and stay adaptable when things go wrong. Right? That's your greatest weapon. Right? Clear thinking, decision making quickly, right? And to remain adaptable, especially when things go wrong. Now, if they're not going wrong, then stay to your focus. That's something else I covered in Inner Path, Outer Warrior, or Outer Code. Sorry. A lot of you got the whole package, and some of you got the upgrade and whatnot. But we went into this mindset stuff way more deeply, and also how a samurai looks at certain of these traits and skills, and how a ninja looks at them, and then there's a big kind of finale lesson. There's like, again, broken into like 5 lessons, and that is how a true ninja actually lives and works and uses both systems, the Seishin Teki and the Bushido virtues, right? In 3 different ways, because I'm a sneaky bastard that way. Anyway, so if you haven't gotten it, right, you might want to think about that. Anyway, all right, so just a couple of like little attack scenarios kind of thing to kind of illustrate, right? Attack happens in tight quarters, like a hallway or stairwell, right? Pre-planned techniques are going to fail. I don't care if it's a kata that somebody thinks they're going to use in a real fight, or, well, this is the way I always set things up. Okay, unless you've trained in stairwells or on stairwells or in hallways, right? James, well, I know you've been around long enough. Weather's starting to break. Where are we going to start training? We're going to train out in the parking lot. Where else are we going to train? Shoshi Paul's not around anymore, so we're going to have to make up the slack for that. He would often send out an email, and people would be meeting at a local park. And the one he took people to, low-hanging tree branches, all kinds of stuff, right? You can speak to that, yeah? You've been to those classes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, depending on the weather on either side of that class, what was the ground like? Nice and even and smooth and rock free, right?
Or not.
Yeah, or not, or people that didn't get the memo and showed up for class in their uniform. God help them if they were in one of our intro programs wearing a white uniform. Yeah. But we've got this little island that's out in the parking lot, out between the main road that goes by and the parking lot. So I'll put people either up on it or on the parking lot back behind it. So there's a curb, a little rise and stuff that goes up, that kind of thing. So it'd be like backing up into a riser on a step where they bump into that and learn how to bump into something solid and big and independently bring the leg back up. So you end up in an ichimonji, in a multi-tiered landscape, right? Where your front foot is on a lower plane than your rear foot, but your hips are still parallel to the ground surface, and you're still upright, and you're adapting that way. Conversely, facing in the other direction, where he throws this attack and you suddenly step back and there's nothing under you, and you have to sink immediately on your front leg, your base leg, to lower your rear foot down to the ground. And now you're on a multi-tiered environment or landscape again, except now your front foot is up higher and your rear leg is down, but your hips are still parallel to the ground. Your body's still upright. You didn't fall over. You didn't crash and burn. If you did, I hope you dropped and rolled, but be careful because there's cars still parked in the parking lot. That kind of stuff, right? So to the best of our ability, we help students train based on these different things, right? So hallways, I do that a lot. We just take friggin' obstacles in the dojo and just keep bringing them in, kind of like those thriller movies or Indiana Jones kind of things where you gotta dropped into a room and then the walls are like coming in to crush you. I just make things more and more narrow and stuff, and they have to function in tighter and tighter space, and then there's bodies moving around them and things like that, because they're going to have to read the lay of the land. They're going to have to be able to move. If they're out at a social event, they're at a if you're in the States here, a July 4th get together for fireworks and whatnot. It's just wall to wall people, or you're at a store, shopping event, or whatever, and it's just wall to wall people or whatever, right? And something starts, somebody freaking grabs yours, some shit starts right then and there, right? You've got a sea of people scattering, people get chaotic, right? Could be in the aisleway of public transportation, plane, train, bus, whatever, right? Well, I don't take those kind of, well, you never know where the hell you're going to be. So instead of assuming that every day is going to be a carbon copy of today, fucking hope not. Can you imagine how boring that would be? Anyway, you know, so, but another scenario too is multiple attackers, right? There's no time to pick the perfect move, right? I have to be able to control a body of people and individuals at the same time. I have to control the group by controlling the individuals. And by controlling the individuals, I control the expansiveness or tightness of the group, how they operate, who decides to move when, right? That's all done based on use of the eyes and attacking the mind that way, relative positioning, angling, because I need to be able to use these guys against each other, right? Because they're like freaking. I mean, this is like being attacked by jackals, right? It's a pack mentality, right? So how do you control a pack, right, of hungry animals, right? And they all have the same target in mind, you, right? So again, survival is about decision making under stress, not just memorized techniques. I think most of you know that, so that's the easy part. Okay, so let's make this switch. Actually, James, anything that I need to address before I switch here to this? The main point I wanted to make for this one.
Just a Strata Ghost over on YouTube said, thank you for the extensive information. I usually listen to you on the Fountain app, which I had to look up. It's just another podcast app that apparently we're on. I've never.
And we're over there too.
We're on it.
See, and that, something else that just came out of the unknown. Well, not only did I know that we're on a lot of apps or a lot of podcasting sites, but I couldn't list them. I just know that the system that we use to grab our episodes and disseminate them. I care about the major ones that people would go to, right? Like iTunes or what is it now? Apple Podcasts and now YouTube Podcast and Spotify. The hell else we on? Pandora, all kinds of stuff, right? I care about those. But like until you just mentioned that, I didn't even know that there was one called, what's it called? Fountain. Okay, Fountain. Right. See, I had to walk around tomorrow going, where the hell is this Found thing? I can't find myself on Found. Anyway, all right. What else we got?
Vox Vespera over on YouTube said, I once watched a bunch of your vids. You're a great communicator. Working on my own program, and you have dropped a lot of wisdom. Thanks for the many great ideas over the years. And also said, Mushin is easier to get to if you know what your end goal is. A lot of trouble comes from the goal or particular strategy for winning is unclear.
Okay. I don't have the time at the moment to ask locator questions on that, but I trust that you know what you're talking about. Okay. Anything else?
Trinity said every branch is low hanging for me.
No, it isn't. You're short. if every branch is low hanging for you, then James is getting clotheslined at his crotch level. I mean,
she said for me, literally me. Every branch is low hanging for James.
Oh, for James. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah. Well, there's that. Right?
But that's it.
Wow. I'll leave it to my daughter. You owe me lunch next time. Anyway. Okay. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. So let's take a look at, we're going to take a deeper look at Zanshin, right? And we're going to take a look at this from the perspective of inner awareness. Okay. So for how long? Weeks? Month and a half? Ever since I started talking about writing and finishing the book. Um, Zanshin's been one of those things that have come up either on Whiteboard Wednesdays or all kinds of places. So Zanshin, if you break down the kanji and whatnot, it points to this concept of lingering awareness, right? We don't confuse this with furoshin, mushin, that kind of thing. This is an active awareness, not a stop everything from going on so you can watch what's actually happening, okay, for clarity, or uh, control the emotional turmoil so that you're unmoved by surprise or things like that, right? People will often kind of confuse these two, and like Heijoshin is one that I don't know, often gets kind of split between Mushin and not Zanshin, Mushin and Furoshin, but it's a whole different kind of awareness, right? But I want to take a look at the Zanshin. This lingering awareness where you're not like darting around and trying to pay attention to everything, but what you're actually allowing to do, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier when I was talking about the Bushin Mei, the Eyes of the Warrior, or uh, Gan Ho, right? The methods of the eye methods and that kind of training within the Gyokoryu. Uh, you're letting the processor work, right? And so your sensory receptors, right? Ears, eyes, touch, that kind of thing, right? Are picking up on things. And again, just like the point that was made about Mushin, right? Knowing what your objective is much more clear, or it makes Mushin easier and more clear. But there's a question for Mushin, right? And this is something that people need to get, because with all of these things, there is, I call it lately I've been calling it the Goldilocks paradigm, right? And that is that there is a just right. And this is on the mandala as well. There is a just right, and there's also too little and too much. Okay, too much Mushin is not Mushin. It's duh, right? We can think that we're open to everything, but we've actually shut down processing too much. And there's too little where we think that we're doing fine, but we're still looking at things and we have an agenda for looking at it. So I don't know. It's difficult to explain, which is why we set up drills and exercises so people can discover it. Okay. Just like with that Munin Muso. A big thing with Munin Muso with the no-tell thing is you have to be so clear about who you are and how you are in a rested state. I don't mean rested like you just woke up. I mean no agenda, because your friends and your coworkers and all that know what that looks like. But for most people, when they try to take up the state of Munin Muso, they change. And people that are close to them can see the change because they're trying to do something. And that's not them. That's not us. When we're just being us, there's no shit. There's just there's a sense of authenticity, and our friends and coworkers and whatnot can pick up on that. Right. And even somebody who's looking to hurt you, and they're like, their radar is on, right? You were one way a second ago, which, made them choose you as a target. And then, you're looking at them and, hey, what? Calm down, man. Right. But you've intentionally relaxed, or you've intentionally tried to be Mushin, Zanshin, Fudoshin, pick a Sheen, here a Sheen, there a Sheen, anyway. You go Charlie Sheen. You go to pick one of these things and you change. See, most people don't know themselves well enough to be able to do that, to do Munin Muso, to do this thing, because they end up trying to do something. And this isn't about us. This is about what he detects. Because as soon as he detects a change, he'll become suspicious, or he'll panic, or he'll He'll turn up the volume on his intent because it looks like you're about to do something. Yeah, but I just relaxed. I was trying to show them that nothing, I'm not a threat. Yeah, but see, who's going to relax when somebody's threatening to kill you? See? Okay. So it's not about us, it's about how they translate it. So this requires way more than just our assumptive thinking. Okay? It's not, it's easier defined and easier, written out in the book or whatever than it is to actually do it, which is why in the book I gave prompter questions and ways to lead people into kind of watching themselves operate, right? Pick one of the elements and do it for a week, or take one of the extra uh, resources that I gave as a bonus. There's a 7-day challenge in there where you pick one of the Seishin Teki elements, and every day there's a prompter, right? I know there's going to be lots of people that, right? I'm not going to name any names, right? But they're overachievers and they think that they're going to do the 7-day challenge in a day, but you're not really practicing at that point. You're just sampling, right? So anyway, but the trick here is in, right? It's Zanshin doesn't just mean being aware of your surroundings. It's about being in tune with your inner state as well. Okay. Because one of the variables, and I mentioned this earlier, about when I was talking about accepting certain things and understanding and knowing what you know and what you don't know when somebody's coming at you. Right? There's a whole bunch of shit you don't know, and you're going to have to sort out as he communicates his intention and his fight style and those kind of things, right? Um, but you do know your inner state. You know what the hell's going on in there, right? As long as you're not trying to deny it, because as a tough warrior, I have to, and so you're going to try to cover up, right? It's one thing to smoke screen or cover things up so that he doesn't pick up on agitation, anxiety, those kind of things, right? But to blow smoke up your own ass, there ain't no coming back from that. Okay, because how do you control somebody else when we can't, or think that you can second guess somebody else's intentions or whatever? When again, I'm using the word "you" as a general kind of thing, not you specifically, the listener, because I don't want. I want ego to keep listening. Okay. Anyway, so I think the critical insight, right, that I want to focus on is emotional awareness in a combat situation. Except this time, I don't want to talk about his. Okay? I want to talk about ours. Okay. Let's face it, violence triggers fear, panic, adrenaline, all kinds of things, right? If you're unaware of this, you lose control. Okay. We go from having fine motor skill, fine mental acuity, right? Details, that kind of thing, right? To gross motor skill, gross mental acuity, right? If your training doesn't account for that, then again, there's more smoke blowing going on, right? Okay. So developing the ability to sense and regulate your own emotional state is crucial. Okay. So again, Mushin and Fudoshin are they're going to take longer to develop, right? Which is why we start students with like, here's a technique, but we're going to focus on this from certain emotional states because that's our emotions are part of our hardwired human self-defense mechanism. When we're happy-go-lucky, telling jokes, cuddling with our honey, whatever, right? Our defense mechanism, like the radar, is like there's nothing blipping on the board, dude. Okay, everything's good. We start getting suspicious. We start thinking about certain things. We start watching, giving somebody the stink eye, watching out of the corner of our eye, getting those weird feelings, those kind of things, like they're not telling me the truth, those kind of things, right? That's Anger, fear, all of these kind of things, right, are indicators. Most people just focus on fear, but you know what? Anger is a huge uh, warning sign, okay, that we're being attacked or could be attacked, and that could be over our ideas, our beliefs, our not whatever we hold to be sacrosanct. You know what that means? Sacrosanct. It means it's not up for negotiation, right? It's a foregone conclusion. Sacrosanct. It means it's not allowed to be touched. Okay. Whenever we find ourselves angry, and it's not because, let's say, somebody is causing harm, and it could be to me, but it could be to somebody else, right? And so that causes agitation, and that needs to stop because, right, this is dangerous, right? But when we become angry because somebody didn't do something we thought they should, they didn't act the way we thought they should, they whatever, right? They didn't keep their word and do this thing they were supposed to do. Okay, right? So is that justified or unjustified? I don't know. It depends. Did we abdicate our responsibility for getting that done to them, or did we delegate? Because they're not the same. Delegate is I got somebody, like if I'm, a manager or whatever, and I have a charge under me, employee, whatever, volunteer, who their responsibility is to get a certain thing done. That's what they were hired for or brought on for or whatever, or asked to do, right? Okay. And I check in with them regularly to see status. Are we on time for the deadline? That kind of thing. See, that's delegation, because delegation recognizes that it's still my responsibility for it to be done. Just because I have somebody else doing the tactical or the physical stuff doesn't make it not my responsibility. See, way too many leaders and people who want to be don't understand this, and that's why they throw fucking people under the bus. Well, it didn't get done. It was, he was supposed to do it. It's not my fault. Yeah, it is. You're the department head. Everything that's supposed to be done that this department is responsible for is your responsibility for it to be done. Yes, I know. You have employees. You have charges. You have whatever, and their job is to do certain things. That doesn't relieve you of responsibility that it ultimately is your thing. So, did you check in with them? No, you just let the deadline go past and then you threw them under the bus. That's called abdication, where I give somebody else the task and then I stop thinking about it because, well, now it's their worry. So it's no different than departments on a job, right? My job is quality control, and so I'm gonna fudge things and pass it out. But see, when the customer complains, they have to go to customer service. See, it's not my problem now. It's not customer service's problem. See, that's abdicating responsibility for a shitty product to somebody else. But that kind of mindset they usually bitch and complain when they bought something and it was all messed up, or they got something, at the restaurant that they ordered, but it was all messed up and whatnot. And they get all pissy and everything, but they never stop to think that these people here have the same work ethic that they are using on their own job. So if I do it, chances are there's a good portion of the world that does it the same way. Yeah, but if I have higher standards and they're still that way, they are still that way. Okay? It's not about them. If I'm the same way and I bitch because they're that way, I'm a hypocrite. If I hold myself to a higher standard, knowing that I'm going to be disappointed, but I understand it, so I'll be less disappointed, and I can handle things from there, at least I'm not being a fucking hypocrite. Okay? I hold myself to higher standards because I hold myself to higher standards. I don't expect other people to follow those standards. And I certainly am not lowering myself because, well, what's the point? Everybody else is this way. Never set out to be average. If I did, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation because I wouldn't be in this martial art or at this level, regardless of the martial art. Okay? So, again, violence triggers all these things. Developing the ability to sense and regulate your own emotional control, right? Your own emotional state is crucial. Sometimes we can, sometimes we cannot. We start students off assuming that they don't have the ability to flip switches and turn things off. So Zanshin on one side allows us to adapt our techniques and our strategic approach to our own internal drives. I'll explain that in a minute. And two, it allows us to use Kyujutsu Tenkan, right? The disguising truth and falsehood, the truth and falsehood interplay, the whatever, right? To convey things that either send mixed messages or convince him that I'm the opposite thing, which actually gives me more time or gives me an advantage. I'll explain that as well. Okay. So quickly, let's get through these. All right. So practical example of Zanshin on the interstate from a training perspective is if we think about how our breathing changes, right? When we're startled or we're stressed, right? If you're aware of that response, then you can control it or you can attempt to control it, right? And controlling your breathing allows you to regain focus and calm your mind. Right? Now, that's kind of a bridge between where I'm talking about and getting toward Fudoshin, Mushin, that kind of thing. Okay, so uh, we're gonna dive into this much more on Wednesday for Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday, because we're going to be focusing on different emotional states that we could be in based on the variables going on in a given situation. Okay, an example of combining Kyujutsu Tenkan and this emotional state is as a police officer. There were plenty of situations that I rolled up on where I was kind of concerned. I was more than concerned about, this person, my own, the level of danger that I was in and those kind of things. But I had to adopt a posture and a stoic, uh, facial expression kind of thing. I had to control my breathing, control the tone of my voice, slow things down so I didn't give away like an edge or those kind of things, right? Because I had to appear to be the authority in that scenario. Meanwhile, on the inside, if he'd have came at me, I'd have been shifting back into a defensive pose because that's where I am on the inside, right? I need time and space to operate with this, but I can't look like I'm agitated, or I can't look like I'm anxious, or there's fear going on or whatever, because my job dictated that I control the situation. Okay. So the truth is I'm vibrating on the inside, and not in a good way. The falsehood projected to him is, you know, I'm I'm in control and you're going to do as you're told. Right. So that also, again, this goes back to Ganho and that Bushi no Mei kind of thing with the eyes, and understanding what your eyes communicate. Right? There's certain muscle groups and whatnot that do things, everything from changing the lens and the aperture and focus and all that, to the darting around and where my eyes move gives away certain things and whatever. And then learning from Gyokoryu, Kotori, and a bunch of these lineages that teach you Metsuki, right? Metsuki. There's a general translation to it, but if you break it down, me is eye and ski is pierce, right? So where you're pointing your eyes, okay, and each of the lineages has, well, not all of them, but a lot of them have places where they tell you to point your eyes, okay, and the whole idea behind it is it neutralizes their ability to intimidate, while at the same time making them believe that you have this icy cold stare and you're unmoving, right? So it's a way to fake one outward manifestation of Fudoshin. Okay. Um, like Gyokoryu has, if you believe that your spirit's stronger than his, then you look him right in the eye. If you believe that his spirit's stronger than yours, then you look right here. Okay. Um, because from fight distance, he can't tell that you're not looking him right in the eyes. Okay. It looks like you're staring him down. Okay. Win every staring contest ever. Okay. But if you're nose to nose, bumped up against this guy, he'll be able to tell because you're going to be cross-eyed trying to look between the brow. Okay. So, but there are these little things that are wired into the systems, right? So anyway, right. But we can convey certain things. Okay. Um, but again, right, there's emotional triggers to watch for. Okay. So if we have a fear of being hurt or hit, right, that causes flinching, it causes freezing, it causes apprehensive movement. What that means is we start moving in, and all of a sudden we slow down, and a punch might hesitate just before we go. Whatever, right? Um, Rage or anger, right? Um, Rage or anger tends to lead to overreaction or careless attacks. Right? So we have to be mindful, no matter how pissed off this person has made me, right? That I don't just blindly rush into the fucking bear's den and hope that I can poke him before I become lunch. Okay. Overconfidence, right? That blinds you to incoming threats, right? You think you got it all handled. You think you figured out his fight scenario or fight style and how he's going to come at you and whatnot. And then you didn't see the uppercut that came up between his body and yours, or you think you're fighting one person and whatnot, and you think that everybody else in the place is on your side. Next thing you know, you get blindsided by an ally that you didn't know existed, kind of thing, because you were so focused on kicking his ass, right? That kind of thing, right? So again, if we connect these to the Seishin Teki, right, the skills, what we have is just generally speaking, we've been talking about these for a couple of weeks, right? Fudoshin, this immovable mind, immovable heart, staying calm under pressure. Heijoshin, generally translated as constant mind, calm mind, common everyday mind. This is maintaining composure during chaos. But another way to say this is um, you don't act any different when things are getting hairy than you would if you were like pouring yourself a bowl of cereal, because it's just you're so accustomed and desensitized to it that it's just another part of your day, right? And the longer you're on like a cop job, military, actual like doing things kind of thing, firefighter, all that kind of stuff, right? The more calm you stay under pressure, right? The more you know shit's going on, and people look at you and they're like, "Why doesn't this upset you?" Uh, it does upset me. Yeah, but you don't look it. Guess I'm used to being upset, but being upset doesn't change what I should be paying attention to. So you are upset. It's really difficult to describe because I'm not upset the way you get upset. I don't have that emotional sting that's going on. So, does this cause a need on my part to pay attention to certain people, certain actions, and certain things that need to be brought under control, given that there's a need for action? Yes. What the hell does that mean? I don't have the time to explain it right now. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to keep watching. So you do you, I'll do me. This conversation needs to be over. Okay? Things change. Okay. So, and then Zanshin, this lingering awareness. Okay. This is where we're balancing external observation with internal calm. But it's about, it really focuses in on not dropping your guard, but not just that. It's in this awareness is born of assessment skills, establishing baselines, like what's normal, right? So when certain things happen, people go like, how do you know he doesn't want to fight? No, yeah, but he looks like no, to you, he looks like he wants to fight. Okay. There's certain things that are just not present. Right. And paying attention, or not assuming that something is over because it looks like it's over, or the end of an ordeal is right. But at the same time, it's also not getting stuck on something, right? Somebody pissed me off at 10 a.m. and I'm still pissed off now and I'm affecting everybody else around me. It's not that either. Okay. So again, I'm going to continue to go inside here, but um, just kind of as a practical tip for training this kind of inner awareness, maybe this will point a little bit better to it, right? During drills or certain types of controlled exercises, right? We don't just focus on the technique. Okay. We train ourselves to, and we just did this a couple of weeks ago, right? We might move, right? Before he throws that first punch and stay out of range. So I'm moving around in a circle. I'm orbiting. This is a Gyokoryu principle. I'm orbiting, right? So that my field of vision, right? Remember the Bushi no Mei stuff, right? My field of vision takes in the surroundings and the placement of individuals within that surroundings. Otherwise, I can only see out from my peripheral vision. That way, I can't see what or where things, people, whatever activities are in the blind spots. So I move to mentally map out my environment. It's also another form of kudaidori, right? From the Koto school, right? So I bring those things into awareness, right? Who's where, how do they look? I'm not mentally processing it like, oh, he's doing that, right? And then again, this is part of just watching, because again, part of Mushin also is to stop fucking narrating to yourself. Okay. You can see it, right? If I pick up a rock and I'm looking at it, I can see that it's smooth. I can see coloration changes. I can see that it's dirty on one side or the color of something, or I can feel, right? It's smooth here. It's a little rough over here. I don't have to fucking talk to myself. And as a matter of fact, talking to myself, just one, it screws up the experience. Two, it chokes the amount of data that your right brain can actually pull in. And three, it takes a whole lot of freaking time. And besides that, you can see it, you can feel it, you can experience it, temperature, all kind of. Do you have to tell yourself? It's like having somebody over your freaking shoulder all day long. You're looking at something and they're going to tell you what you're looking at. Our brains do that all the time until you get it under control. Right? People that get caught up in internal dialogue loops, that's hell. And I get it. I get it. That used to be a huge thing for me. Right? So, but it's not just about the internal calm. It's recognizing it so that you can you operate based on that knowledge. Okay. So let's just stay with this thing. Okay. So one of the things that we start students off with on my side of the training, okay, is understanding and getting in touch with your emotions. Not that way. All right. And recognizing four base, I'm going to use the term emotional states, but I don't mean happy, sad, angry, that kind of thing, right? What I'm talking about is neutral, defensive, aggressive, and evasive. Okay. So they come from different types of agitation. Neutral comes from whatever's going on doesn't bother me. Not because I said so and not because of stubbornness. Okay. It's just not, this guy could be in front of me, threatening to punch me in the face. Okay. Do I believe him? Well, I don't disbelieve him, right? He could want to punch me in the face. He could also throw a punch and try to punch me in the face. What matters in this moment from this particular standpoint is what emotional mode am I in? Okay. I'm not emotive at all. I'm neutral. Why am I neutral? Because there's something about this person that's not triggering fight, flight, or freeze. It's not problematic, right? There's also a sense in there that if he does throw, I know how to evade, right? I know, right? I'm not pissed off at him, so I don't need to whack his ass either, right? Yeah, but he threw a punch at you. I don't know why, right? Maybe he's trying to test me. Maybe he's having a bad day, whatever, okay? Whatever it is, the emotive state. So I don't force myself to be here. I'm just there. Again, back in my cop days, I roll up, I get out, somebody's just, hey, calm down. Calm down. Okay. Get to you in a second. Okay. Right. What I need is IDs. Again, I was a military cop, right? So I need these things, right? But nobody is causing, no matter how frantic they are, no matter how threatening they were to somebody else or whatever. I don't, and this is not an oblivious state, like nobody can hurt me, so therefore, right? Or that assumption of control. This is just, right? I trust, and another way to look at your kami is this idea of trusting in your condition, or trusting your kami, because your body tells on your internal state. Okay, because there's a huge difference. Again, for those of you on audio only, I'm squaring off to the camera and I'm crossing my arms and I've dropped my shoulders and I'm relaxed, right? And I'm talking to somebody this way. That's very different from somebody who's this way and they might even be like poking their head forward, right? And that's very different from somebody that's cantered to the side and they've got their head like, oh yeah, well, let me tell you something, okay? Because this is defensive, right? The arms crossing the primary life-sustaining organs to shield them, right? This is just a more controlled way to do this, right? So the only time that this is not defensive is when you're square on, because your brain bucket and everything is square to them. So just because you're covering this doesn't mean that there aren't other things that you can be killed by. Okay. So there's a relaxed, okay. This is not defiant. This is, what's your point? I mean, it's mildly, but if I were standing in Shizen, everything's wide open. Okay. So there are these indicators. So you can play around with kami from many different perspectives. In this case, what I want my new students to be able to do is match strategic kami, or match kami strategically to emotional modes. Because if they're absolutely in control of the situation, or they have no need, or we're working with attacks where it's an absolute surprise, then they have to start from Shizen very, very relaxed, because they have to go from not feeling anything to all of a sudden having to deal with this thing, so they can simulate it until we create it, right? So so what we want to do is gear in. So if somebody is defensive, right, what their body's already turning to the side, the hands are already kind of coming up, that kind of thing, right? So I know we can learn a martial art and we can take up these things and we can learn its name and we can learn what it means, what lineage it comes from and all that. But you know what? All these things are scientifically and strategically designed to work with certain situations, right? We have a dragon realm in training, which is I'm in control and there's the ideal. So he's coming in. So I pick a kami to match and control his abilities, right? To do what he does well, right? Which means I'm going to take them away, right? Okay. Or we have the tiger realm, which is way more emotive. It's more rough around the edges and that kind of thing, because shit's coming in and we need to deal with it. Right. In the Kotoryu, we have Hidari and Migi, right? People often look at the kami and they go, okay, Migi, right side. That's not what it says. It's right. Hidari, left. Well, it's implied left, right. Okay. One, very base level. Yes, you should be able to do your kami, all your techniques equally well, left side, right side. Doesn't matter. Okay. But right is the ideal. Left is the oh shit. So how many different ways could your kami be rough around the edges or broken, and you have to operate from that position? Okay. Omote, ura, call it whatever you want. Okay. So I want my students to marry up these kami. Now later on, they're going to have to disconnect these things when we start working on controlling him and all that, because they will have associated all of these defensive kind of positions with a certain feeling. And then we start talking about no. Now we're going to do Kyojutsu Tenkan more, and we're going to control his perceptions and choose a kami to create open windows or to create his perception about where he thinks we're going to come from. And then we're going to do something different. Okay. Or we're going to take up one. See, in my heart, I am ripping your fucking throat out and I'm going to get you before your shot gets to me. Fire, right? But I want to convey, so you're willing to get closer, right? So this is called, it's a one form of kage no kamae, shadow kamae, where the real kamae is in my heart to be unleashed when you trigger the trap. But the outward manifestation is the shadow. It's what you're going to make all your plans around. Okay, this is different from kokoro no kamae, which is how I'm teaching the students up front, which is kamae the heart, right? What's going on? That emotive state is how we're okay. So I'm being authentic. My zanshin is directed inside. What's my state? What's my body telling me? I mean, I may want to be, I'm not moving, but my body's rocking my weight toward my heels and my shoulders are trying to lift my arms and limbs to cover my life sustaining systems and all that. That's a pretty good fucking indicator that you're not all that in a bag of chips, that you should probably cover some shit because your body's already trying to do it. Okay. And if we understand the emotions and them as being drivers, right? This is part of the adrenal system, right? If we understand them as drivers, then we understand that each state, each driver fires certain muscles, doesn't do anything with other ones. And these things affect spinal alignment and these different break points in the spine that allow for more movement and more flexion. Most of your vertebrae move a little bit, right? But there are certain break points, right? Thoracic, lumbar, that kind of thing, right? That move more, that allow for more flexion. Okay. These are where the chakras sit, right? So each emotional driver locks certain ones and opens other ones, which means that our ability to move in any given direction is going to be easier under certain drivers and more difficult under other ones. So if we understand that and we listen to our freaking emotional state, we know whether we should be doing evasive hira kind of stuff or defensive profiled seigan, ichimonji, doko, bobi, whatever, right? Or we should be, right? Because our system is already in that state. It's already positioned to move well or not well. Okay? And this is what I mean by people train as though they're always going to be under control. They're always going to be in control of their body, of their mind, of the situation, of him. It's a fucking fantasy. Okay? Always? No. Sometimes, hopefully, most times, boy, wouldn't that be great? Okay? But we can get more of the most times, almost all the time or whatever, if we're paying attention, right? So in past episodes, past training, I've been covering paying attention to him, paying attention to the environment, paying attention to whatever, right? And then how can you use those things? Now what I want to focus on, and again, big part of Whiteboard Wednesday is going to be looking at these directions of movement and forces and whatnot on the body, and what kind of tactics and techniques are easier under that level, and also how things change, because we can change from moment to moment. Okay, a lot of you, whether you bought the book or you've heard certain KUDEN episodes in the past, you've heard me talk about this scenario that Hatsumi Sensei had me write an article about when he was trying to convey to everybody that if they have no real world experience, they need to get together and chat with people who do, regardless of whether that person is in the art, no matter how many techniques they know, whether they know the same number, regardless of what their taijutsu looks like, could look like shit, right? But they've been inside that, what I call the bubble, but they've been in those scenarios. And while they may not be able to tell you all this shit that, we're all proud about, they will tell you how you better train and what you better be paying attention to, because they've got experience inside that bubble, inside that bad situation. Okay. And so the situation, right, it was this drunken GI that earlier that day, he had tested and earned his black belt in, well, I'll just call it tic-tac-toe for the moment so I don't offend anybody that might be doing uh, the art that he gets black belt. It doesn't matter, right? Decide, go out with some friends, celebrate, right? And the more the drinking that took place, right? He was like hitting his friends and throwing these little kicks and all this shit that, is not kids at 10 con because it's showing everybody what you know and what you don't know. So what you're telling them when you do bullshit like that is that they should, if they ever want to get you, they should just poison your food or shoot you in the fucking head from across the street because you've already given away all your freaking secrets, right? I mean, just playing around. Yeah, well, okay. So bad ninja, right? You're giving away your secrets. So anyway, but the more it happened, right, the more aggressive he got with doing it, the more drunk he got, the more aggressive he got. And next thing you know, he like he crosses a line, right? And they face planted him on a gravel driveway, and he just went ape shit, just went in rage, stormed back to the unit. Duty officer tries to calm him down, punches a lieutenant, right? All kinds of stuff, right? That's when we get called, right? So we show up, and my partner and I are trying to de-escalate things. We're trying to calm this guy down. Next thing you know, he comes flying at me, and but if we're talking about the emotional state kind of thing, right? I went from kind of a relaxed earth, like I'm the military policeman here, right? You need to calm the hell down, right? Not aggressive, anything like that. Just hey, calm down, right? Right. And then that turned into, I'm a black belt. I don't have to prove, how bad I am. I never mentioned anything about my training, whatever, right? Just I'm a black belt. Da, 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 da. Okay, cool. That's good. Well, congratulations, right? How long you been training, right? Whatever. And he kept circling back to, and this started to become the red flag, right? Where I went from confident to him repeating, "I'm a black belt. I don't have to prove how tough I am," right? But you think you're tough because you got that MP badge, or actually we were wearing helmet liners and stuff like that, right? And you've got that nightstick and whatever. So I take off the helmet liner, hand it to my partner. Nice, calm down, dude. Right? It's just look, he's got the nightstick, and you think you're tough because you got that gun. Gun's gone nowhere. Okay, it's not coming out. It's all good, right? Well, what he was doing was systematically stripping me down, trying to give himself an advantage because he was trying to make this a something that he could handle based on his tic-tac-toe ish thing, right? And so, but as he repeated that last one, right, I started to get apprehensive. So we call that a water mode, right? More defensive, because now I start looking for stuff. I start getting this feeling, right? And next thing I know, he closes in and he is nose to nose. And what you have to understand is I was short for a military policeman. Okay, I'm 5'6" and change in the minimum height for a military policeman when I was in for men, right, was 5'8", which means my nickname in a couple duty stations was walking small. Okay, not walking tall. Anyway, in my face, he's like, way taller than me. This guy was jacked. He lifted weights a lot, right? When I say nose to nose, I had to look up for our nose to be right here. But if you know what I mean by that sick, sour smell, that's a result of pretending you live in a little place in Tennessee where they make a certain type of whiskey, right? All of a sudden, I became offended. And I said, "You got 3 seconds to get the hell out of my face." And then I heard him say, "To 1,000." And this uppercut came up between us and caught me. And all of a sudden I was in evasive mode and he was flailing and I went up into a hoko, right? Don't do this shit in a real self-defense situation, right? Because you're protecting your brain bucket, but you can't punch from here, right? This is a cover your ass because of certain rules and whatnot. But no, hoko covers that bubble. Anyway, so he's flailing and stuff. And I'm evading these individual shots that are coming in, right? And all of a sudden, I felt like our arms kind of come together in a way that I had felt in the dojo many, many times. And I had this elated feeling like, oh, I know this. I zipped a mushadori on him, laid him out on his freaking side, on his butt, and then continued to manipulate that, right, into kind of a, it was an ogyaku, but it was done from an onikudaki position to flip him over onto his gut so that we could get him in handcuffs and that kind of stuff, right? So, but the emotional shift through each of those things, right? This, right? I had to kind of let it play out and adapt to the not only the internal feelings, like emotional feelings, but the feeling of the pressure on, this is what Uke Nagash is all about, right? Feeling the pressure of what do I feel? Not just that am I hard blocking and those kind of things, but so I could sense when I had an opening, when I could catch something, that kind of thing. What are you aiming to catch? Nothing. I'm aiming to catch whatever's going on, which is the principle that's taught as the secret to always having the right technique. That's in the Takagi Osho, which is never do a technique that's not already working. Okay. So just wait for it to kind of happen. I don't go fishing for things, right? But everything kept changing. So that adaptiveness, right, to go from in control, de-escalation, to feeling that, be on the lookout, to now the switch into the aggressive mode. You got 3 seconds to get, and I'm pretty sure I said fucking, right? Which was unprofessional. However, get out of my face, right? That was not planned. It was not conscious, whatever. It was a trigger to that you're in my face, and that rancid, offensive, it just triggered that response, which I now had to write off because, right? Probably not the time for me to give him 3 seconds because I was expecting to get to 3 and that didn't happen. Okay. So, but then all of a sudden having to adapt to things and like that. So was Mushin going on? A lot of these things were going on, but not because I was trying to be Mushin, Zanshin, Fudoshin, right? They're a product of training. They're a product of, but was I purely Mushin? No. Was I purely No, not at that point in my training. Okay. I was only in the Q levels, by the way, at that point in this art. All my other training was in aggressive arts, Jikundo, a couple of small circle, large circle, jujitsu, taekwondo, tangsudo, just a whole bunch of things. There were two forms of kung fu, all kinds of stuff, right? So, but things that I couldn't do as a police officer on duty, because that's a way to like lose your job, okay? To end up in a fist fight with somebody, the way most people think of fights. Okay. So anyway, so that's an example of writing off these inner states and being aware of my own state, my own condition, not just what he's doing, because there's a relationship, but my state is going to dictate how I can move, how my brain thinks, how I'm filtering things, all kinds of things, right? And to understand that is a huge, huge step up. Okay. Now, from a strategic approach, okay, other forms of adaptability, right, can end up showing up through concepts like KUDEN, right, the blending truth and falsehood to manipulate perception. So, like, like I said, I could be afraid in the moment, but as a uniformed cop, I can't show it, right? I could be like wanting to just reach down and pull his freaking lungs out of his throat, but I'm going to show this kind of thing because if I'm in here, he's going to be adjusting to that. So what I want, hey, calm down, dude, right? And then when he takes that shot, see, it's a whole different world, okay? Or I'm carefree and I just, I want to be out of here, but I get some kind of signal or cue that look, motherfucker, I don't have time for this shit, okay? Back off, okay? So I could test the waters, right? See if he'll back down because really I don't want to have any part of this. But when he comes in, I can shift. Okay. A lot of people train as an all or nothing kind of thing. Like, I like that stuff. I always fight from Jumonji. I always fight from Hira. Why? Like, you have precognition. You know what the hell your attack scenario is going to be like 4 weeks, 4 years, whatever from now. That's pretty fucking awesome. Because if you have abilities to that degree, if you have that level of control, why the hell are you training? If you already know you're going to be attacked at 4th and Elm at 4 p.m. 4 years from now, don't be there. Right? But people act like they've got all that stuff, right? Or whoever the attacker is not going to bother them, or it's going to be a fair fight, or it's going to the ninja's ability to adapt to the given situation based on information that they have and already predetermined things, like, you don't get involved in shit because they could find out where you live or follow you back to your clan, your home, your whatever. Okay. So other things, right? Kamai as a state of readiness, using your body's natural positioning rather than rigid stances. Okay. In Shinden Fudoryu, right, we have this open structure versus Tagagi Yoshoryu is more of a controlled or structured control. So what we're looking at here is knowing when to be free and when to control the environment, or when to have to control him more specifically because of the environment. We just did that. Was that last week or the week before? So again, I'm not sure. I don't have Friday planned out yet for the masterclass, but one of the things that we could do is, instead of starting a drill or a technique with your best stance, start from a disadvantaged one, right? Start from a disadvantaged position altogether. Back is turned. You could be seated. Your hands are full, right? You have to force yourself to recover and adapt. Right? I have a picture out somewhere for a self-defense program that we based on the whole Godai kind of thing. It's called EDR, Emotion-Based Defensive Response, from a bunch of years ago, when my daughter Trinity, who is now older than this, right? She was like 2-3 years old, right? Had one of my guys come in attacking, and what I was trying to teach people was how to use an infant's natural response to cling to their parents when they're falling, or they feel threatened, or they feel in danger, or whatever, and how to effectively combine that with kamai to have the panicked child, their limbs tied up, exactly where they are, and they're attached to you so that your center of gravity can still work. And so I got this picture out there somewhere where, as she came in, I was carrying her normally, and as he came in, I shifted back into kamai and yanked her ass out from under me so that her body clung to my body. So I had her here, and I was basically in a bobby, right? And so she was so close to me, everything was turned so that he couldn't get to her and whatnot. But I had her centered and stuff, so I was able to uke nagash, uke uch, kick, that kind of stuff, and keep him back. But again, it was one of those kind of things based on, can you defend? There's another picture out there from another photo shoot we did. I think there was a video that we did called The Cutting Edge. And it was all knife defense stuff. Very rarely did we use any knives. There was a basement construction area kind of thing that we had set up, where coworker, somebody else on the site or whatever, became agitated and whatever, picked up one of these spackling blades and was coming with that. There was another one that was outside, and a ladder was involved and stuff. There was a knife attack, and there's a picture of me getting out of my vehicle, summertime, the windows down, and this guy comes, and instead of waiting for me to get out of the car, stabs right through the open window to get me. And so I'm using the car and the car door and whatnot to, do shit to him and stuff like that. But that's what we mean by, like, training in atypical places for the average self-defense or martial arts person, because those are the places where shit's more likely to happen. Okay. So anyway, again, we'll talk about some of this other stuff Friday or during Whiteboard Wednesday or whatever, when it comes to practical applications. But that's the big thing. And I know I'm pulling from the Seishin Teki area and whatnot. So if you have the book, great. If or even the add-on programs or whatever. But If not, right, if you're serious about developing the mindset, right, of a true warrior protector, not a fighter, not somebody who's just good at fighting and you've come up with your cool favorite style or whatever, but I mean somebody that is able to adapt to different environments, different attacker types, different scenarios. Who knows, right? The mindset that allows you to act decisively under pressure, right? Then the book is there. It's a place to get you started, right? The Seishin Teki Kyoyo, right? If you're ready to take things further, right? If you have the book, right, and you didn't grab it the first time around, right? That inner path versus the outer code program connects these mindset skills directly to your self-defense and your ninjutsu training, right? I go into how a samurai would look at these things, how a ninja looks at it, right? And of course, we also bring it together because the ninja uses both sides. Okay, so James, for anybody that doesn't have it, can you put the thing for the Seishin Teki page in the chat thing? It's onlineninjaacademy.com/Seishin Teki as one string. SEISHIN TEKI. So again, next week we're gonna look at things differently. Probably going to focus on like the Ninja no Hachimon, and come full circle back to that as well, because an important piece of that is being able to translate the original model into today's world without violating the damn principles and concepts that uh, that the original model was created from. Right. What a lot of people do is they just make up other shit because, well, we don't use spear. We don't use. Okay. So they just do some substitutions, but those substitutions make no sense because they don't match the original logic. Not that a spear has to be a broom handle, or it's not about that. Right. It's actually not about that at all. Right. So that'll be fun to look at. But anyway, so as you go through the week, or if you want to interact or whatever, right? I'm going to invite you to share your own experiences, right, with mental training. When did it save your ass? When would it have been like a really good idea? So we'll take some more questions here before we wrap things up. But James will put that. Hopefully, already did, but the link will be there for anybody that hasn't grabbed it. And then we'll go from there. So let me just shift screens here. All right, James. You're my translator on the other side between me and the chat. So questions, comments, complaints. I know I just covered a shit ton there, but the stuff will make more and more sense as we make it more tactical and more strategic on Wednesday, and then Friday masterclass, making it much more physical, right? So what do you got? Questions, comments?
Trinity said the Army used to tell us to embrace the suck. It's not as though we are numb, but rather the pain and struggle isn't relevant to what needs to be done. Get it done well and efficiently, and the suck stops.
Not true. However, I love the ideal that they approach it from. Being somebody who got sent to a conflict, okay? I have direct experience with flying to what could have been the end of my days. And between that flight down to a little tropical island, which is really quite beautiful, just wasn't then, to things that occurred while I was there, it's amazing how quickly people who think they have all their shit together crack, fold, whatever, when the real thing is happening. Because they thought they could either blow smoke up their own ass while they were trying to blow smoke up everybody else's ass, or the toughness from the streets or their previous experiences or whatever somehow carried over to this very, very different scenario. People People were put on a different flight and sent home in a fucking fetal position, and not because they were dead. Not physically anyway. And it happened very, very quickly. And I mean, like we had a couple that folded quicker than you could make a bad piece of fucking Japanese origami. Right? Other ones, right, lasted until a certain situation occurred, and then they broke. Um, there were studies that came out of Nam. I think I explained to some of you guys along the way. There were studies that were done during Nam where they found that only 20% of a fighting force returns effective fire in a firefight. There's a whole group that does a spray and pray, which means they run out of ammo really fucking fast, and it's not effective. They're terrified and they just do that. Probably while they're emptying other magazines and ammunition wells. And other ones fold. Or they panic and stand up to run and get gunned down then and all that kind of stuff. 20%. Okay. How the hell do we keep winning these skirmishes? 20%. Okay. So, Trent, I understand the ideal, right? We're all taught that because, right, they want to preload your head and all that kind of stuff. But the more mental training we can do, the more you can put yourself through and under situations where you have to adapt, you have to stay calm, you have to stay focused, you have to control your emotions or whatever, right? Doesn't mean you're going to always be controlling your emotions. Sometimes they're controlling you, and you have to do training that, like any given technique, okay? Do it when you're absolutely in control. Do it when you're absolutely fucking defensive and shitting yourself. Do it when you're angry, right? And you need to get them first. Do it when you're being evasive, right? And you're looking to be an opportunist, or you're doing a hit and run kind of thing. Those kind of things, right? If you don't work your techniques in different emotional states or from different emotional states, you're going to be hard pressed at doing your techniques at all, because they weren't trained in a way that there's a match, where there's a part of your brain that recognizes, been here, body feels this way, that's the option. So when you're not consciously thinking about what to do next, on autopilot, your body's doing this thing because you've been there before. The muscles are wired for it, and you just go, because you've wired these things together. People operate like their thinking, their emotional states, and their physical activity aren't connected. And yet your thinking and your emotional states guide your thinking. We're not as fucking rational as we think we are. Okay. You want to be rational. You want to be clear and all that. You need experience with drills and things like that under pressure, not just doing your techniques more free form, not just doing your techniques faster, whatever, because you're still doing a choreographed kind of thing. Okay. You could just start by like standing in Shizen or in whatever kamae, facing a given direction as though the original threat came from there, and your attacker's allowed to come in from any given direction. If you're fifth down and above, they should be coming from your blind spots, because now you need to be honing that saki or kuji sensing of danger to be more than, I mean, think about the fifth dan test, right? I mean, I know, I've been through it, right? You're sitting in Seiza. It's touching on the top of your head, says start. You know exactly where you're standing, and there's only one cut direction. How fucking controlled can that be? But that's a gateway to, doesn't matter what angle, doesn't matter what direction, right? Doesn't matter if you're standing, sitting, kneeling, facing Mecca. Doesn't matter, right? But way too many people, man, pass that test and then just go, thank goodness I don't have to ever take that one again. Right? So I know I get it, right? I've spent 2/3 of my life studying ego and the effects that ego can have for fucking us without intentionally wanting to do it. It thinks it's protecting us, but we have to be careful. Okay. So this is the hidden stuff, right? This is the unknown unknown. The more we don't know, about what we don't know about the effect of the emotions, call it the spirit, whatever, the mindset, our beliefs, our personality type, all those kind of things on how our body functions and how well we will function or not under extreme conditions. Now, you can't go all out and do like absolute extreme things. That's why we have different drills that help students focus on a given thing. And then hopefully, collectively, and I say hopefully, I'm borrowing things that my teachers had, and I have little spins on them and all that kind of stuff that we got run through, and they have served me. They have served me well. But they were also worked hard, and we didn't have a choice. Well, we had a choice. I could have quit. I could have gone someplace easier. I could have stuck to one-on-one straight line, back and forth, bouncing, right? And saying, the only place to really practice your skills is in the ring. Really? That's where you're going to practice knife skills. Really? That's where you're going to take the gloves off and you're going to practice chokes and you're going to work on like snapping his floating ribs so that it impales one of the organs in there and shuts him down. That's really? I don't think so. Right? That's not a test of skills. That's a test of willingness. It's a test of bravado. It's a test of, how well you can take a shot. There's certain benefits to that, but don't ever fucking confuse that with what we're talking about here, ever. I mean, you can do what you want. However, that would be another blowing smoke up your own ass kind of thing. Okay. Just like with Alan's, my one guy was talking to his son, trying to convey how when he's watching MMA fights or boxing or whatever, and he's like, no, that's what we're looking at is very, very different, right? There's psychological warfare. There's that kind of manipulation going on. There's deception. There's, all kinds of things. And it sounds like, I don't get it. I don't, what do you mean it's different? I don't get it. I get it. Right. We want the masses to not get it. That's what gives us a leg up. But back to Takamatsu Sensei's quote, right? Chuninjutsu is the study of the unknown, right? And it's bringing the unknown into the known, and it's studying things that most people have no clue about. Okay? This is not training like everybody else, fighting like everybody else, but better because we got some kind of trick up our sleeve. So most people think of ninja as tricky. I get it. They have no fucking clue because the trickiness, what we're really looking at here is the fight is won before it even starts. Because what you're looking at and what you're controlling, he won't even know after the fight's over. Okay. Well, everybody has, when I say everybody, I mean like 70 to 90% of people have turned this powerhouse into just another martial arts option among martial arts options. The treasure that's there requires a whole shifting in perception. Anyway, all right, James, back to you. Questions, comments? Thanks, Trent. Oh, is your mic not working?
It does when I unmute myself.
Fair enough.
Greg jumped on from Australia a little bit ago.
Awesome.
Baki Onieri said that's real life situation training.
Shinkengata. Shinken. Live blade. Right? Not just with blades. Just like Mutodori is not just unarmed against blades. It's unarmed against any weapon. And it's also weapon against weapon. The point is you are outgunned. He has the advantage. He has the longer weapon. He has the shorter or sharper weapon, whatever. Okay. What else?
Maui said the way you explain these things, amazing. You are a wealth of knowledge.
Wish I felt like that all the time. Maybe I'd stop training and studying. That's all right. Is that it?
Yeah, that looks like it's it.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, we have a new service that's added onto this thing here, so I don't want to go over the 3-hour point, because if we do that, it won't convert things into shorter clips that we'll be putting out, because we know how people like to binge their shorts, as opposed to you guys are amazing, sticking out something this long or catching up on the recording later or whatever. And those of you who say you binge listen to these things all the time, bless you. Because James is in the process right now of moving all kinds of stuff over from a system we were using for our coaching calls with inner circle students. What do we have? 1,600 hours of recorded lessons and stuff over there? Because last time you took an inventory was last year, and that was like 1,300, something like that. So we've had to have added at least 200. So we switched over. For those of you who've been doing the coaching calls in the inner circle program and whatnot, we switched over to Zoom, because I don't need to be paying for 2 of these, but the other system is like degrading. But he's trying to move this shit over so we don't lose it, because when I flip the switch, it'll all be gone. But we're getting these clips and stuff that automatically get generated after these things. So they're just a couple of second to 60-second kind of things. But we're letting AI pull things out. It's amazing how it'll grab things based on what people are looking for. So look for more of those as well. Anyway, I think that's it. We'll go ahead and wrap things up. If you have any questions, comments, whatever, you can hit the comments thing, or you can send questions to us at Warrior C. That's Warrior, WARRIOR, the letter C, at warrior-concepts-online.com. Right. And we try to answer them. We just get a whole bunch of stuff between spam and can Ninja really jump from like the ground up to a 3rd-story balcony without a trampoline? I don't even answer those things anymore. I had somebody ask for somebody asked me a question about instead of having to buy the Seishin book or some of the stuff that I was teaching, right? What books can I find those techniques already in? Like, you don't pay me for tuition. We're not a student teacher relationship or whatever. And I'm supposed to do all your fucking work for you? No. No. Holy shit. People in the West have no fucking idea how true mentor relationships are supposed to friggin' happen, right? Whether the mentor is getting paid or not. Jesus criminy. Give me everything based on my word that I'll be the best student you ever had. No. No. Okay. All right. James, thank you very much. We'll chat as soon as we wrap this up. But for everybody else, thanks. Next week, we'll take a look at Ninja no Hachimon, these 8 mandatory training areas that were determined in ancient Japan. And we're going to take a look at what's really going on, right? Some factors that people need to take into account before they go making up shit or ignoring certain things because, who's going to do that in today's world? Okay. So be careful, right? But hopefully I'll see you on Whiteboard Wednesday, where we convert a bunch of this stuff into physical strategies and tactics. And then, our masterclass on Friday. All right. So that's it. Thank you very much. I will see everybody again next time on KUDEN.
Get more of KUDEN Radio. Subscribe through your favorite podcasting site, or join our clan of serious modern warriors at online